Hey, there's Brad for some reason. Brad's not supposed to be there for some reason. Hello, everyone. I have no idea why that happened. It changed the camera on my main stream, which I hadn't been testing. I was yakking with Brad before this started. So this is going to be a different format than the usual live streams. I've called this one Technical Difficulties, Episode 1, and we're going to interview Brad. About once a month or so, I'm going to be doing an episode of Technical Difficulties with other techs, amp designers, amp builders, people from companies you'll recognize, very high end up in the industry, schlubs like me stuck on a bench, and a lot of great musicians, both about their gear and about their musical experience and what it's like to be out on the road or to meet this criteria to be a touring guitarist, etc. I just have a lot of friends in the industry, both as musicians and as techs, and I figure you guys have heard enough from me on these Saturday chats. It's time to broaden the spectrum, and both because he's been such a good friend. And waking up at 5 a.m. to moderate these things—that's hellacious. But also because he's going to be much more understanding of technical glitches, like just happened, than maybe some of my other guests that have already signed on to do this. I'm going to get all the technical gotchas out of the way. So welcome our first guest and test guinea pig, Mr. Bradford Webb. Or is it Bradley?
Hi. Call me whatever you want, mate.
Just welcome Brad Webb of Brad's Guitar Garage, or Garage, he might say, down there.
Yeah, I say garage. Garage. I say garage, which is very low class, but yeah.
He's all the way from Emu Plains, Australia, which is just outside of Sydney. I've
not seen one emu here in my whole life. So
any clownfish? I hear you got clownfish down there too. So.
I don't think we've got any fish anymore.
So anyway, the format of this is we're going to more or less interview each other and talk shop, and you guys get to listen in. And on the second hour, we'll start taking questions from you guys. Shop. Yeah. So,
how you going, champions? Good to see you all. A lot of familiar names there.
Yeah,
I've already dragged quite a few subscribers from your channel over to mine, and I plan to drag a lot more today. So
go for it.
Head over to my channel, subscribe, and like everything I do because I'm awesome.
Someone has to. Yeah. So,
what you workshop?
What you got on your bench there, man?
I've got a Super 6 reverb at the moment, which I'm doing a video on. I spent yesterday just doing no work, just doing videos, because I've got like 10 amps so I've got to get stuck into. So on the weekends, generally, I'll maybe do a live stream on a Saturday morning, starting at 6. I'm an early riser. I'm the opposite of Lyle. So it works out well with our cross-streaming. I'll do a live stream usually on Saturday morning, just diagnosing stuff or just having a quick look. I'll process the quotes over the weekend, and then through the week I'll do the work and then show you the progress as I'm doing it. And then usually the weekend after, when the shop's shut and this is an industrial complex, but cranking a JMP to 11 probably isn't the greatest idea for the other tenants. So on the weekend I can crank it well up because there's no residences around here. In fact, for my basement video that's coming up, I've just got all the parts in for that. People keep asking when I do a video, what happened to the basement? We live in Australia, so parts take like 3 months to get here. So the parts have finally arrived. I'm about to get stuck into that one. And what I want to do for that one is crank it up. We've got a main street here. It's got all the fast food joints like 20, 50 meters down the road, McDonald's, all that crap. So I'm going to take the super bass, sorry, I think I said basement, out into the parking lot and crank it to 11. We're going to walk down the road about 1 kilometre and we're going to walk up the road and hear it echoing through the industrial buildings, and I reckon that'll be really cool. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's going to be cool. Well, Hal says Brad's level could be upped a bit. We went through this last night. His level cannot come up anymore with the software that we're each running right now because he's on Windows and it's stupid. And I'm going to turn mine down a little bit, and you guys turn your speakers or monitors up and let us know if we get a good balance here. I just went down a little bit.
So I did bring my Motu micro book from home, but I didn't have enough time to test it. So I thought we'll stick with what we know works that we tested yesterday. But essentially, the M2 doesn't have quite enough gain on the input for a 57. So I probably should have gone for a dynamic mic. Maybe I should just be louder.
Well, a 57 is a dynamic mic, I must point out to you, Mr. Tech. But
what did I say? Hang on.
You said dynamic, but you meant cardio. You meant a condenser. Yeah.
The other one.
Yeah.
Brain no worky.
Oh, man. Talk. I'm only on my third pot, so, I'm not fully awake yet.
Yeah, I got the famous indestructible cup here.
Oh, I have my thermos a lot of the time, too, in these videos. So.
Yeah, you need it. So I haven't got a coffee machine in the shop yet, but you guys can help me pay for one, okay? So I can properly caffeinate throughout the day. But we went to a metal gig last night, so I think my voice is a little bit weak too, because trying to talk to people over, two Marshall stacks, ridiculously loud, you lose your voice a little bit. So I was sounding better yesterday, I think, but yeah, we'll get there.
I don't think anyone's here for your voice.
Oh, yeah. You're the dulcet tones of psionic audio.
That's me. We should really talk about amps and stuff, I guess.
Yeah, we should.
So, all right. Everything wrong with the Mace in 30 seconds. Go.
Oh, God. I had it really good yesterday. All right, so there's too much part density. You've got inappropriate board design. You've got the boards smell like rotten fish or cat piss when you heat them up because of the conformal coating, which eventually conducts. You've got carbon composition resistors that overheat or are underrated. You've got diodes expected to supply more current, 50% more current than they were rated for. You've got components mounted under other components. You've got tiny little pads that rip out when you try and remove a component. You've got tiny hair thin traces that burn out instead of blowing the mains fuse if a fault occurs because there's no age.
Time. That's all you get. That's all you get. I expected better. I'm sorry.
You caught me off guard.
Welcome to my show. Well, that's the thing. I just don't get that cult of Mesa because they're objectively, repeatedly crap, expensive crap, and the owners seem happy with that. I was thinking about things to ask you. That's like the high cost extreme, the Mesa stuff. The other thing that gets me are the Blues Juniors and stuff like that, where 90% of the amps that come in that I have to repair, and I'm charging $200-300 to fix an amp, often for people who are at a lower price point where they can barely afford that. It seems like it's cruel. 90% of those repairs, I think, would be totally unnecessary if the manufacturer gave any kind of damn and took any steps to actually say, oh, Ohm says this. Oh, this is rated for this temperature, or this is rated for this power. Maybe this thing that gets really hot should not be on this single-sided PCB board. Maybe we should do what anyone else would do if they cared. But no one cares. And so I get blamed. I get blamed by customers.
Fenders, yeah, well, I don't necessarily get blamed, but I think that was the reason I started making videos, to show how the manufacturers are taking advantage of people. And you cop a lot of heat from that because people want confirmation that they've made an intelligent purchase when they haven't really done any groundwork before they've purchased a device. So they just want to hear that what they did was good and they're a good, happy boy and go back to being a good boy. The reality of it is that these manufacturers, it's not even cost. That's what pisses me off. So the Hot Rod Deluxe, it would be cheaper to use linear regulators in the low voltage supply.
But they'd have to revisit that design. They have to hire a new designer to do a new board.
They would have to relay out 2 square inches of circuit board.
I know.
I could do that drunk on a Sunday afternoon in about 5 minutes. And then just change your boards, right? There's no cost. It's like no cost. I don't understand. And then the Blues Junior, literally all they'd have to do for that one, no cost, just change the BOM, change the screen grid resistors to 1.5K, and change that bias divider, and you're good. The amp would probably last a really long time. Maybe the input jack too.
Yeah. That is a really crappy input jack that costs more. If I don't buy it the bulk the Fender does, but for me to buy the input jack that goes into Blues Junior is $5 in America.
Yeah.
To buy a Switchcraft L12A is $2.75.
If you're
And
buying 5 million of them,
I know.
like Fender would, like,
Yeah.
they would name the price.
Yeah, it
So-
drives me nuts because the guys out there buying $1,500 and up amps, aside from the Mesa people, don't get taken like this. So you get a $2,000 amp, it fails. Typically, it's going to be something minor, $150, $80, whatever, plus parts. It's the guys who like had to save up to get that $700 used amp, and they get hit with a $300 repair because Fender did all this crap, and filter caps. I started off doing the videos came from me doing photos of the amps I was working on, and I was putting them on Facebook. So if the owner had me working on their amp, I could say, here's a picture of the problem I found with a description, and here's what was required to fix it and why. And then I shared it so other people could watch it. And then as the phone got better and I could do video, it became video because I don't have to go in there and type everything. I can just do it all at once. So it started off as covering my ass so that someone would not be mad at me because their Fender hot rod needed filter caps, rebuilt low voltage supply and screen grid resistors, and new input jacks.
Vibe. I did get that vibe from your Facebook videos back in the day, and that's about when we first sort of. Well, I started following you, and then I got all excited when you sent me a friend request. I was like, Lyle sent me a friend request. Oh.
Well, I'll tell you, Brad and I are on some forums together on Facebook, amp forums and stuff, and like calls to like. And, even in text, you can just say, okay, yeah, this snark is my kind of snark. And that's been great because I've made friends from all over the world within the technical community. And it's really great when you're just like, that guy would be easy to hang with. Joe Pampel in New York is another one of them. I don't want to say, anyone watching this who's our mutual friends, if I'm not mentioning you specifically, you're not singled out. Alain, ça va? But we get this opportunity to meet really cool people. But you can kind of tell that, I get along with that guy, or he may know what he's talking about, but I don't want to go to dinner with him. And it was nice to know that in addition to you being a snarky MF, that you know what you're talking about too. Yeah.
Well, I don't really. That's the thing. So, I mean, I've said that I've been pretty open with this. I'm not intelligent. I'm not above average IQ or anything like that. I'm not particularly studious. You just follow the lines on the schematic, and after a while, they start to make sense, right? And I still have to look up formulas. There's something, I know you're shit with numbers and model numbers and like valve numbers and stuff. I'm shit with formulas, so I need to look up the most basic shit. Anything.
I don't remember any. I don't remember any formulas. I have all the formulas I need in spreadsheets. I put in the variables. I get the answer. I already did the work to make sure I know which formula to use, and it's in there. I can't do that stuff on the fly, but most of the amp stuff is not being brilliant. It's being thorough. And
if you had to be brilliant to fix stuff, I'd be screwed. I'd be on the street.
But if you have a systemic view of how things should work, then this thing, it just repeats. It just it branches out. And you can look at all this stuff and be scared of it. But it's just a triode. What does that triode need to operate? Another triode. Blah blah blah. It doesn't matter if it's a champ or a dual rectifier. It's the same series of problems again and again. And if you're thorough and you understand it. It's the thoroughness and the willingness to actually get in there and fix it that I find lacking in a lot of texts that I see online.
I think everyone's afraid of having a systematic step-by-step approach. Like, you just have to sit down and think, okay, if you turn up to a car accident as a paramedic and someone's head's missing, you're not going to take their pulse, are you?
Typically not.
Yeah. So... First thing, check your voltages, right? Everyone says that, but no one does it, right? So there's so many forums where even other like techs, like be they hobbyist or a professional techs, are asking for a problem, and I go, "Have you checked your voltages?" Yeah. I've checked them, and
what are they?
Because they've got an open plate load, and if they check their voltages and knew what should be there and see that it wasn't, they would know exactly what the problem was, but. They go around and around in circles, and they don't want to hear from me or you or anyone else. You need to follow a systematic troubleshooting process, and you will fix every amp that comes in your shop without difficulty.
I would see Brad try to help these guys out there and on these threads, and they would say, Hey, I've got a Marshall, and it makes a weird noise, or doesn't make a noise. And Brad would say, "Well, what are your voltages on V1 and V2 and V3?" And then they say, "Well, I replaced the space modulator, and it still does it. What are your voltages?" "Well, I changed out the output transformer." "What are your voltages?" I bought some Mullards. "What are your voltages?" That everything.
I had to leave them.
But why we even ask people? And it's not just us. I mean, we're on there with as you say, legends. If you get Bruce Segnator on there, Andy Fuchs, or these guys have been doing it for decades, and as a beginner, you don't listen to what they say. You don't take their actual advice, and then you argue with them because your brother's cousin read on the gear page. I'm sorry, it's the false equivalency of experience and a false equivalency of opinion. This is not what white bread makes the best toast. This is not just pure opinion. This is electronics and circuits and actual physics and experience. And not everyone is equivalent. And I see that attitude from so many people online. I'm like, you can't just.
I don't know. Like, I really want to help them, but eventually, literally, 1 in 500 breaks through and becomes one of our friends, and we, take them under our wing, just like you did with me. Because I wasn't professionally in this.
I haven't taught you anything, man.
What? Yes, you have.
I've told you to get your lights straightened out and make sure you don't look like an Oompa Loompa.
You've taught me more about video than amps, yeah.
Yeah, you know the amp stuff. And you know the solid state stuff better than I do. I know the solid state stuff well, but I don't do it very often. And so a lot of the stuff that I know, I forget the name for, or maybe even the reason why. I just know to do it. You're staying current on that stuff. So no pun intended.
I think it's not so much even solid state. I think it's the construction technique. So I'm more than willing to dive into SMD stuff.
I'll do it if the amp's worth it.
Yeah,
but most of the SMD stuff that comes in is such a low price point that it's not worth it. Or it's a company like Black Star, or even Bless Their Hearts, Boss Katanas, where they don't release a schematic, and it could be any of a number of things. If they give me the schematic, I'd be able to say, okay, that's what it is. But for me to spend the time drawing out the circuit on a very complicated electronic things, with all the modeling, if I have to reinvent the wheel at X dollars an hour and the amp's only worth $250, I'm going to decline. Especially when I know, like with Black Star, they don't repair that stuff in the field. They just send out a new board while it's in warranty.
What really frustrates me, though, is it started off in the garage when I had no overheads, and it was a puzzle and it was fun. So one of my videos is done rather well. Any video that is of a product that's got a systematic failure or systemic failure, I should say. I'm talking to an English major here, geez. They
Hydromatic.
They all have the same problem. Everyone will go looking for that problem and find my video, and those videos do rather well. So one of them was like the PR15D from Peavey, which is long obsolete, but I had one come in, and it was a challenge to fix it. So they'd throw out the board, and then eventually they'd throw out the whole bucket. This is a P8 powered PA with the removable bucket in the cabinet, essentially. But it was like a 2-cent ceramic capacitor in the enable circuit that turns on the microcontroller or the microprocessor. And what really just struck me was this whole big cast plastic polycarbonate thing that will take 500 million years to break down in landfill was going to go in the bin that day unless I changed this 2-cent ceramic surface mount capacitor in the decoupling of one of those chips. And it's like so much waste. And that stuff doesn't get recycled. Like
I hate the landfill.
They say it does, but it doesn't.
I hate the landfill aspect of this industry. Right to repair.
That's my biggest gripe.
Is a huge thing, and not just right to repair, but something which was made to be repaired.
Yes, and serviced for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, why is that 66 baseman there that I'm doing that heroic restoration on possible? It's possible because Leo Fender spent years fixing radios. He came up doing radio repair, so when he built his own amps, he expected them to be need to be repaired, and he made them easy to repair. So you can keep them going for decades and decades and decades, and nothing in the amp is brilliant. Nothing in the amp is extraordinarily clever. Nothing in the amp is unique. Nothing in the amp is fancy engineering. It's simple stuff that works, that can be replaced, and it works well.
It's not trying to be everything to everyone. It's not trying to be a Swiss Army knife, which leads us back to Mesa Boogie.
Yeah.
So,
well, people, a guy was asking me today, all right, the Mesas, he saw my videos and he understands that Mesas are problematic, but he loves the sound of the dual rectifier. What else should he get? And I said,
I kind of like that too.
Well, here's the thing. What I said was that the dual rectifier and the 5150 and the 6505 are all straight rip-offs of the SLO.
Yep. Yeah, just get one of them.
A Soldano SLO 100 is so much better built, and it costs more. So
yes,
you have to pay for that really good lunch. It is not a free lunch there. But if you like that sound, a tech like you could turn an SLO into sounding more like the rectifier, which is a little bit fizzier, a little more of a swarm of bees thing. But but I also told the guy that, given how most things are mixed today, my kid listens to metal, and so when he's in the car, I'll put on the metal stations, and a lot of the mixes, like Fear Factory, I heard, and some later Metallica, those guitars are so small and thin.
Yeah.
I was like, that's all preamp distortion, and those amps are biased so cold.
Oh yeah.
Neural DSP, Fractal, all these things are going to do that sound better. They really will. As long as you can hear them at the right volume. If you're comparing 70 dB through your studio monitors versus 100 dB through a 4x12, the Mesa is always going to sound better. But that's the playback system, not the signal generator, so to speak.
Yeah,
it's complicated. I could make a dual rectifier last and sound great, but it would cost as much as just buying an SLO to begin with.
My most heroic repair, I think, recently was a triple rectifier that went on fire. Triple rectifier. I should have named the video that. Damn, why do I always think of this stuff later? But yeah, there was like areas of the board I had to fully cut sections out of the board because they were just like charcoal. But yeah, just going back to the right to repair thing, that's a big movement now. And there's a lot of companies like, Apple and all the majors are trying to do it now, but they're essentially saying that they are right to repair. They're behind it, and here's our schematics, here's our kit to change a screen, but the kit is like $17,000, right? Like they've designed it so the kit is prohibitively expensive, so no one's going to fix it, right?
Yeah.
So they're doing these lip service. It's really scummy. If you get into it and see all this shit that's going on, there's a whole movement behind it. There's people backing it, like Lewis Rossman, who's another man that inspired me to do videos. So we're just inadvertently going into my life story here. But when I was a professional shop fitter joiner, right? Hold
on a second. I have to interrupt for just 1 second. Scott, I'm not saying that metal should use fat tone. I know about cutting. I know about setting. I'm saying that a lot of metal guys have no tone. It's a bumblebee. Listen to Tool. That's done right. It is possible to do metal and sound awesome. It's just that most people don't. Go back to your story now. Sorry, I just had to get that off my chair. I was getting accused of shouting at clouds. And
we always shout clouds. We love it.
Fucking clouds. There, I led the demonetization. So let the demonetization commence. Go back to your story about being a joiner.
10 minutes in now. Yeah. So I was a cabinet maker joiner. It was good when I was on the tools, but I had in my head that I was going to become, like I wanted to work in the office. I wanted to be a bit more up the stream in the design and project management. Eventually, I just got put on a bench programming CNC, right? So that's not a high-tier job, but everyone on the floor, factory floor, looks at you, you're a pencil-pushing dickhead. And one of my mates who's probably watching right now, he still calls me that. He was down on the floor, and then all the people on the floor look at you as if you're management, and all the management look at you as if you're on the floor, right? And that's the job of a CNC programmer. And if the little apprentice dude on the floor that presses the button to watch the machine go brr, if he calls in sick, then you get put on his job, which is basically he was just an apprentice, like a first year that presses a button and puts a sheet on a machine. So I figured that I want to go into more the drafting. So I started doing design drawings, but now you're the first step between your company and the architect or the designer, and usually they're, let's say, a little bit underqualified for their job. And there's bands like the Skyhooks. They were carpenters. There's a reason they're called Skyhooks, because they want unrealistic shit. So, we'll just hang it on Skyhooks, no problem. So dealing with architects did my head in. So eventually I started to really hate my job. Plus I was working with really toxic people. So I'd put my headphones in. Drafting was cool because you could sort of zone out, put yourself in a room. Usually the deadlines were tight, so everyone left you alone. You were left to your own devices to solve problems, draw things, come up with solutions that no one else had really thought about to make a job happen. And that is pretty similar to this, right?
Yeah. On our good days, yeah.
Yeah. But,
that's what we hope the day is going to be like.
Exactly, yeah. I was working with really toxic people, and I put these headphones on to escape. And I used to listen to music, but then eventually I found myself wanting some kind of, intellectual stimulation of some sort. So I started listening to electronics podcasts because I loved electronics. And I'm like, I want to listen about something that I love while I'm doing something that I fucking hate, right? So
Makes total sense.
First thing I Googled, it was about 2013 probably. We were fitting out the Masters home improvement stores, which was your Lowe's. It's literally the same company. They tried to kick off here, but we've got a monopoly called Bunnings, and they kicked their ass, wiped the floor with them, and then they eventually just called it quits. And now all those old Lowe's stores are like, boutiques and shit and co-ops and whatever. The buildings are still there. They're like zombies of a capitalist venture. So we were fitting out those, and it was about 2013. I just Googled electronics podcast. I just want to hear people talk about electronics, just to get my brain back into it, because I hadn't done it for so many years since I was a kid. Like, I used to build amps when I was like 6, right?
Right.
And I found the first one that popped up was The Amp Hour, which is Dave Jones and Chris Scammell. And Dave Jones, everyone knows him from the EEV blog. He's one of, hi, I'm Dave Jones from the EEV blog, And he's just down the road. He's Castle Hill, right? It's like 40-minute drive from here. I still haven't met him yet, but I want to. But then that went down other rabbit holes, like all the people that he had on. Bill Hurd, Chuck Peddle, all the guys involved with electronics, computers, sorry. And then, I started getting into, just doing guitar repairs to supplement my income with a hobby. Started doing that for the local shops, and they started asking, you do electronics and stuff, don't you? I go, it's just a hobby. But Dad was a radio engineer in the RAF. So I would pick up all the amps and guitars. I'd take the amps to him. He'd work on them over a week or two. Ridiculous turnaround times now compared to now. Like, he'd turn a dozen amps around in a fortnight. Like, that's pretty insane now. No wonder we got the work. And then eventually they moved away, and I started doing more involved amp stuff, and that was probably around 2015, and everything sort of snowballed from there. I didn't really start doing the videos until kind of the start of COVID, just because I was in my garage every day. Once I quit my full-time job and went freelance, I was still drafting from home around 2016-ish, but then went full-time with the repair stuff about 2018. I think I really committed to it. And the videos were a way to stay sane when you're by yourself in a workshop all day, not talking to anyone during lockdown. And that's when...
yeah. I mean, it's weird if an alien were to look at what we do during the day. I'm sitting in a room by myself, working on strange things with electronics, and I'm narrating the whole process the entire time. Yeah. And the alien wouldn't know that anyone would ever hear that. Fortunately, you guys seem to like hearing that stuff, but it is weird. But no one in my day-to-day life has any inclination to hear me talk about this stuff. So I enjoy having this audience of people who actually care about this stuff, because if I tell my day-to-day friends about it, they're like, okay, I got to go watch my cat.
Champ.
Yeah.
Don't they watch themselves?
It was a lame excuse. I'm gonna get some
If,
more
if
coffee.
aliens came down to Earth, I think they'd assume cats are in charge, to be honest.
Yeah. Some houses I've been at, they are. I'm gonna run and get some more coffee. I'm gonna turn over the stream to Mr. Brad here. Sorry. There you go. There you go.
Yeah. He's getting confused with his camera again. What CAD software, Jim Cox? I use PythaCAD. I paid about 18 grand for a license of that, but it paid itself off after, I don't know, 6 months of jobs. Just looking at the chat now. Rectum fryer. Yeah, that's what we call them. The sky-high shipping prices have really put a dent in my electronics hobby. Where are you from, Kevin? I'm hearing the shipping over in the States is come good a little bit. It's come back down a touch. It's come down a little bit here, but the times haven't gotten any real better. If we're ordering from CE distribution, it usually takes anywhere between a month and 2 months to get here. But the big problem is if someone wants something from say they want a hip shot tuner from CE distribution that's like special order, I won't order it that day. Because they'll ship it and charge me a ridiculous amount of shipping for one item. So I'll save up an order and order like once a month. So if you order something today and I've just ordered yesterday, you've got to wait a month before I even order it, and then it could take 1 to 2 months. So you're literally talking for some stuff. And then if it's on back order, some parts have been like 6 months. And the customer gets angry. I just keep forwarding them the emails. It's about all I can do. But yeah, speaking of embarrassing if someone saw you at the bench, I've got a retail store. So I think you guys might have seen it on stream, but this bench that I'm sitting at now is an open bench. It's got a little hob on it, but I'm looking towards the front, and that's a retail guitar and amplifier shop and accessories, mixers, PA systems. We do Allen and Heath, Cali Audio, DB Technologies, everything from Ernie Ball, Quick Lock, all that kind of thing. Everything's sort of high quality. We try to keep the quality stuff up. And when people walk in while I'm doing a video, my front door is a bit squeaky. The hinge is a bit squeaky, and I kept it that way so I'm not talking away and someone's standing behind me waiting to be served and I don't know they're there. Because you feel like a real idiot when someone busts you making a video. It's kind of embarrassing. It's almost like, someone's bust you having a whack or something. It's a bit...
What kind of videos are you making there? Well, now you got the lighting and you're a little.
Did I give you the OnlyFans link? I don't know.
Well, you're a little less Oompa Loompa like, but see Rule 39. Let's get back to some amp stuff, and let's try to be positive for a little bit. I think everyone who watches my channel and your channel knows that Mesa and hot rods and stuff like that are bad. It's frustrating to me. Here's a good thing. It's really hard for me to. I feel like I'm communicating X, Y, Z to the greater audience, and then I find that I've been misinterpreted. Like, if I have a criticism of a hot rod because it doesn't do heat dissipation,
welcome to the internet.
Then people think I'm just slamming PCB amps. So I say that the hot rod is bad because heat dissipation. I say that the Mesa is bad because the traces are too close together and arc. But then I say that this AC-15 custom was built well, or this Friedman Runt 20 was built really well, and people are like, whoa, you said that those were bad, but these are PCB, so are you a shill? Did they pay you? I'm like, you can do things well or you can do things badly. Like, if you ever go to New York, go to Bleecker Street Pizza. I think it's at 7th and Bleecker Street. Get a slice and a Coke, $5, change your life. One of the best pieces of pizza in the world. You can go to Pizza Hut and get a piece of what they will call pizza. It is assembled much the same way as the Bleecker Street pizza. So the AC-15 custom, the Freeman Runt, the Sir Ombre are all constructed in superficially similar ways to the hot rod and superficially similar ways to the Mesa. They're not at all the same. And I've not been able to get across the distinction to people very well. What are some misunderstandings that you run into again and again and again with your customers?
Ooh, I think the thing where the guys that, I say guys because most of them are, but the people who want to know every little thing about what you did and then try and devalue your work as if your intellectual property, your mind that you use to solve the problem isn't worth money. So they're like, oh, it's just a diode. I'm like, okay, well, I'll put it back in. I'll clean the board, get rid of the flux, and you fucking find it.
Yep.
Champ. So you're paying for the brain power. It's not that powerful, but, you know, what I often said in my live streams is you don't have to be smart to fix stuff, but the experience certainly helps.
I think
So-
I think you denigrate yourself. I don't think there's any
It's the Australian way.
I don't think there's any way to describe you as unintelligent. So I'm sorry. I think you're way smarter than you're letting on. I think, but it does.
Should have seen me last night.
Well, you weren't in the shop. Let me say, when it comes to amps and electronics, I can't decide. I can't speak to your personal decision making choices. But
Yeah, I think just equating the part cost as the whole repair cost.
Oh, yeah.
That's probably the biggest one. I've been really lucky with customers. There's been like 2 dickheads, and that's it, like ever. And they're just, I'll never forget their names. You forget everyone else, but you always remember the massive dickheads. And one of them, like,
just one second, sorry, Buck Wild. I'm not slagging on you. I'm not slagging on everyone. I'm just saying there's a general trend in the YouTube comment section that people don't listen to everything that we're saying, and we're trying very hard to give very specific information. But I'm not slagging you, Buck.
You're
and I'm
not slagging on you guys. You guys
Right.
are legends. You're watching us.
And I'm not slagging on the general commenters. I just wish I could get better at really teaching the points I'm trying to make. And I've been really trying the last 6 months to focus on that. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just don't want Buck coming away from this thinking that we're just making fun of people. That's not our point
Absolutely
at
not.
all.
Absolutely not. No. I think people often watch your video and that I don't know if it's just they're used to seeing the review channels where everything's really positive, and then they get really taken aback and just think that we're, I don't know, just bitter old bastards. Like, personally, I love watching bitter old bastards, but some people don't. I don't know, but they sort of get the vibe that something's wrong because we're not, hey guys, this is an amazing new amplifier. It's got all these features, you know?
Yeah.
Please visit our sponsors. So it's
It
not what
was much
this
better
channel's
than
about.
Cats. I'll see it again and again. Yeah.
Yeah, but so it's a bit different. But channels have personalities, and our personalities are just different. And the people that like our channels will keep coming back, and those that aren't a fan,
Well,
will
even
find
the ones
something else
who
that they enjoy.
like our channels don't always get the point. And
I mean,
I
I'm more open to
have been learning.
arguments.
I have been learning an awful lot about how to critique things effectively, because I assume that things which are obvious to me are obvious to everyone, and that's been a fatal flaw.
Yeah, that's
and
a big mistake.
led me to some problems where I would say, well, you know, this thing has got a bad connection on the AC input jack, but that's not important. The rest of it's fine. People say, well, it's got a, I'm like, that's just a random bad soldered connection. That could happen to anything in production. That doesn't reflect badly on the thing itself. The rest of the thing itself is really good. I glossed over it, but I felt I should mention it, but I did not take the time to say this is in the shit happens category. That's easy. That's no big deal. The rest of it, the brilliant stuff, the stuff they did right, that was the hard thing to pull off. And I felt I did that manufacturer a disservice on that particular review, because it was obvious to me that, hey, that's the important stuff, and this is just, I noticed along the way that this particular unit had XYZ problem. So
I think it's really hard when you're making a video to cover everything, and because you're trying to process it while you're looking at it, unless you've come up with a script first, which I never do.
Neither do I.
Written down point form. I'm looking at the amp for the first time, usually the same time as I'm filming, right? And I'm going over stuff. I've not necessarily looked at the schematic to refresh my memory on that particular circuit. It's sort of off the cuff, and I got that from Dave Jones because that's the way he does it. I got inspiration from him and other channels like AVE, and it's like hanging out with a guy in a workshop, and it's more like hanging out with someone at a pub than hanging out with someone at a professional facility, you know?
Yeah.
So it can be really hard to remember everything, remember it in the right sequence, and still try and sort of be yourself, because what I found when I started doing more produce videos, because you remember I used to just do live streams. That was
Right.
it. And when I started actually editing stuff, which I was really afraid of because I knew how time consuming it is. I'm not going to say was, because it still is. You might take 4 hours to get a 20-minute video out of 8 hours of footage.
Well, I've already told you how to solve that problem, and you still haven't installed it. But okay.
Oh, DaVinci?
Yeah.
No, that doesn't fix me yammering on a camera and having to edit it out. That's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
It's not the processing I'm talking about. I'm talking about the actual chopping up my shit talking.
Well, I have to go through and find all the ums and ahs. And
I spend more time looking at the audio track to find out where I'm actually speaking than looking at the video track. I pretty much don't look at the video track until it's all done, and I'm just checking that the transitions have occurred properly.
Yeah.
But I'm mainly just looking, because I'll roll film, and I'll stand there staring at the amp, tracing the circuit out with my eyes, seeing what goes where. Like the Princeton that I just videoed yesterday, I'm going to edit that this afternoon. Because I don't have a social life, so after this I'm just going to go back to video. But the fact that wires were swapped over, it took me a second. I'm like, hang on, they put the phase inverter node where the reverb driver node is, and got the reverb driver where the phase inverter node is. And it's like, oh shit. So here's me mentally processing that fact while I've got the camera rolling. So I'm going to have to edit out that, because I'm just standing there going into the camera mic while I'm thinking, right?
yeah.
No one wants to hear that. So,
well, yeah, I pull up my audio file and I find big chunks of silence or whatever. I'm like, all right, mark out there, mark in here, and speed through the middle. Is there anything there I need? Not okay. It's gone. So I've become pretty relentless and ruthless because I need to get this stuff done. It's one thing to be a good tech. It's quite another thing to be a filmmaker at the same time, and I'm far from it. But I am trying to show more, but while still keeping as much as I can that, hey, you're just looking from over my shoulder while I talk about what's going on with the amp. I do try to present more of a, hey man, check this out, the thing that I just found, as opposed to when an electron meets another electron and they're very, very happy together,
Once upon a time, there was an electron and it had spin. The rest is up to us. So just going back to talking about work, I can see, and video editing. Wes, no one wants to hear Wes talk about VFX work.
I do.
I really do. Wes.
I really do,
too.
Wes.
I want to know how it works.
I asked you to send me your phone number, Wes, not just so I can talk to you about your damn app, but I want to know more about your life, because you're doing something much more interesting, or at least in theory, than I am. But and you seem like a cool guy. There's so many people who are regulars on the chat and the comments.
That's it.
I would love to just have real relationships. That sounded weird, but get to know you guys more and more in person. Phone calls and stuff right? Phone calls and stuff, because I think a lot of us really would hit it off. It's like I was saying about the tech community, where I've met a lot of people. I have a good sense of a lot of you guys, and except for you,
I'm really
not you, and you know who I mean.
Guy with two names. I am very curious about people's anything that's their pastime, hobby, anything that's interesting to them is interesting to me. I don't find anyone's hobby boring. Like
golf.
Well,
boring.
I love walking and I love hitting things.
As Twain said,
I love swearing and breaking.
Golf is a good walk spoiled.
Yes. I used to like golf as a kid. I don't know where that came from.
You just like plaid. You were very confused as a child.
I was into ska, Mighty Mighty Boss Tones and stuff, the Boston scene.
That's such a wimpy little fake ska scene. I'm sorry.
It wasn't a real ska.
Specials, Madness,
that's real ska.
True Tone, and not to mention the Wailers. But I got some years on you, man.
I'm a bit off this Madness, because I was at a house party once and I crashed there, and everyone was on LSD. I wasn't, because I don't do that shit. I'm messed up enough how it is, but they kept playing what was this, House of Fun, over and over and over again. I'm like, what is this, a bad dream? I was asleep and I thought I was dreaming it.
Well, they have other tracks, but that sounds more the problem of your housemates at the party.
That wasn't my housemates. I'd never live with those nutcases.
That wasn't Madness's problem.
I woke up and they had a pet goat, And someone had clicked Legos all over the pet goat's fur, so the goat was covered in Lego.
Man, I'll tell you what, I got one that'll beat that. We were in Lisbon, and we were in Lisbon in June of 2019. And June in Lisbon in the Alfama is the Feast of St. John's, followed by the Feast of this, followed by the Feast of that. And the entire Alfama becomes a block party for a month and a half.
Yeah, right.
And we're staying in this ancient building, an Airbnb up on the top floor, with the windows open at night because it's Lisbon and it's hot and it's beautiful. But they're having these parties till like 4 a.m. They start again the next day at 3 p.m. And
So cool.
We're walking all over the city during the day. We just want to go to sleep, but we can't because they're going to like 3, 4 a.m, all singing songs in Portuguese that we don't know, that we feel left out of. And they're eating grilled sardines, and I tried them, and no, thank you. But I tried them, and I respect the love the locals have for them. I did try them, but anyway, the beer was wonderful there. But so we're laying in bed one night, and we're exhausted. We've walked like 20 miles uphill both ways because it's Lisbon, and it's like 3 a.m, and the sound of the party outside stops. And we're like, okay, they're stopping for that. Because they had PAs, they had sound systems, they had thousands of people out there. And it stops. And we're like, okay, we can go to sleep now. And about 3 minutes later, we hear, yeah, Shania Twain came on.
Let's go, girls.
And we had to hear like 10,000 drunk Lisboans singing how they felt like a woman. In English, and their Shania Twain English was much better
Bad English.
than my Portuguese, but it was just like we surrendered at that point. We will never sleep again. We live there now. All we are going to hear for the rest of our lives is, "Let's go, girls!
Let's go,
Man,
girls!"
I feel like a woman. I'm not making fun of the Portuguese. It was a beautiful country, but it was a bizarre night.
Hey, baby.
Yeah,
Ooh.
British Channel.
That's become like a football chant. And they even
the hey
did it at
baby,
Oktoberfest.
or are you doing the Ooga Chaka? There's two different things.
Just the hey baby.
That was British Channel back in 64, 65.
I thought that was like earlier than that.
No,
Yeah, right.
might have been 63. It was right about the time the Beatles came over.
Yeah, okay. And that's even become like a chant at Oktoberfest when we went to Munich in 2015.
Really?
Yeah. And at the end of every chant, song, whatever it be, you've got to scull the beer and then put the liter stein on top of your head. And if any beer drips out on you, everyone throws shit at you. But yeah, that was a good time too. But anyway, we're talking about just partying and stuff now. We should probably get back to amps.
Well, mine was they were both musically related, but you need to give Madness another shot because Madness is awesome.
I listen to Henry Rollins on KCRW every Saturday. What does he say? Hello everybody, this is Henry Rollins. You're I forget what he says. He's got a catchphrase that he says, but he's got it's like a 2-hour show, I think, and I learned lots of stuff on there, all the old punk stuff. We went to see him at State Theatre when he came out here. He's got some amazing stories, but I've learned so much when you're really busy and you don't tend to seek out music that you haven't listened to before. You've got to sort of make an effort, but it pays off massively. That's why I went to that gig last night. Like I'd never seen those bands before, but they're local bands playing metal stuff, and there was some mediocre bands, but then there were 2 really standout ones. It was great. Now I know them. If you don't, people say, "Oh, there's no good music these days." It's finished with the Stones. Well, they haven't finished, but you've got to look for it.
Oh yeah,
you've got to go to record fairs. You've got to talk to people because you go to a record store, and now they're the only ones that are still alive are boutique-y ones, and everything's fucking $70 for a record. So you got to know what you're listening to before you buy it. So that's, I guess, where Spotify and that come into play. But I just hate listening to that because I know how little the artist gets.
I'm weird. I will use Spotify or Apple or whatever to get previews of things, and then I'll buy the damn thing.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Because
yeah.
I want. Hey, I really like this band. I'd like them to continue to be able to pay the mortgage. I'll buy the thing. Yeah, I'll buy a T-shirt. Doesn't fit me, but
I find a lot of bands, a lot of people aren't using Bandcamp enough. I don't know if there's a reason for that, because to me it seems like the perfect system. You can buy just the digital copy. Now you own it outright. You can download it. They have high quality downloads, which isn't always possible on the major ones. Because there's times when you want to download stuff. You want
I always download it. I always download it. I want to be able to have it on my phone so I can listen to it in the car. I don't want to have to. I don't want to have a Wi-Fi connection. I also don't want the compression and the reduced bitrate. I want the full.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
The full thing. You know, as high a sample rate and depth as possible.
So I think on Bandcamp, a lot of they've got like FLAC downloads, like high definition.
That's the good stuff.
Yeah, and these days we've got the storage for it. Like it's
no
biggie.
Right. It used to be a huge deal to deal with FLAC, but FLC. I don't remember what it is. FLAC.
Yeah,
but
FLAC.
Yeah, but it used to be just like, this is 10 gigabyte. You're gonna need 4 more computers, and I was like, oh yeah, sure, I got that.
Yeah, but it's the same as speakers and hi-fi and stuff though. Like, remember the 70s? Everyone had like a Tannoy or a JBL or whatever, like the top end hi-fi stuff, and everyone was so proud of their speakers.
Marantz.
They were fucking huge.
Yeah,
and like Dad builds speakers. He's got scan speaks. Like Tweeter alone's like $800 or something, and he builds the boxes for him and tunes them up, and he's got data and audio to measure them and analyze them and stuff. So many hobbyists used to do that during the hobbyist sort of peak of electronics, which was centered around like CB radio and hi-fi. They were the two big pulls before computers came into play, and then everyone started building their own microcomputers and whatever. But then as the technology got better, the sound quality diminished, and everyone was going boom boxes, right? And then now it's the Bluetooth speaker, and if I hear another friend say, oh, yeah, this little box, it's amazing the bass that comes out of it. Being a tech, I know how they do that. And they inverse the shitty frequency response of the driver, and they impose that with digital processing as an EQ curve to flatten the response. But you've just boosted the bass by like 28 dB to make it, the same as 1K. So now you've got like no headroom. So by the time you've boosted it
to
reasonable volume,
it hurts me. Aside from the fact that people were just like, I'll just get my music from YouTube at a lower bit rate or whatever. The fact that most people are more concerned with having little white stems coming out of their ears than actually hearing what things sound like. These come in a 32 ohm version for like $150. These are these?
I can't remember what they are.
Biodynamics. So the 32 ohm version of
say stuff.
32 ohm version of this, about $150. It's going to sound better than almost any other headphone on the market with an iPhone, with the laptop, because of the low ohms. It's going to be louder. It's going to have a much better fidelity than any of the little earbuds, but people would rather have the Airbud Pro thing because it's really a fashion choice. It sounds the same as the little bitty $20 ones that came with your old Samsung cell phone. They're crappy speakers that are Bluetooth enabled. People don't even know what they're missing out on because they've never experienced good audio before. And this is not audiophile $900, $3,000 headphones. This is $150, but you have to care. It's half the price of AirPod Pros, but you have to have a cable.
And what really shits me, someone just spoke there. Bose Technologies. Bose Technologies are box designs over speaker quality. Yeah. So Bose are one of those companies that were one of the first to put inverse EQ on a really shittily designed speaker. So if you didn't have the special Bose, really pretty but kind of stupid amplifier and processor, the speakers sounded like absolute arse. So of course they'd make like a proprietary connector so you couldn't accidentally plug them into a normal like Yamaha amp or whatever. You had to use their amp to compensate for all the shitty drivers and box design they were doing. Man, they were aesthetics over.
We've been looking for a new car for Nikki, and we went and test drove some new cars, and there's one model had Bose labels everywhere, and the sales guy on the test drive was like, "Hey, check out the sound system, it's Bose." I'm like,
"Okay." Said that to the wrong person.
And I'm like, "Okay, let's check it out." And they had XM radio, which is a satellite radio. If you don't have it there, it's called Sirius too. and I found something that I knew very well playing on a channel where I knew what that's supposed to sound like, and I turned it up and I played with the 3-band EQ in that Bose system.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, it says Bose, but it sounds like shit. I mean, it's fine. It's just a
Well, that's
car.
right.
You don't
Bose.
expect too much, but is there any way you can take off the Bose extra costs on this model? Because those are crappy speakers. And he's like, oh,
Yeah.
no one's ever said that before. I'm like, because no one's ever listened.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
they hear with their
people will
eyes.
just agree. People like I've.
Or
I'm guilty of this.
they've heard that Bose are good. So
Yeah.
it's like there was a Volkswagen Beetle edition 5-10 years ago that had Fender speakers in it, a Fender sound system,
Oh yeah. Wow.
including the logo and all that. I'm like, Fender can't even make an amplifier these days, let alone make a car sound good. On that lovely note, we're going to take the first intermission. I'm going to stretch my legs, and when we come back, we're going to start taking questions. I'm going to let Brad answer as many as
that's a
he
good
wants.
idea.
So we're
see how
going to
I
take
go.
about a 7-minute intermission. See you guys in a bit. I guess I'll have to choose them then. Hey guys, before we get started with opening new questions, I just wanted to go back and check some super chats that came in while we were yakking the first hour. Ed Goswick, thank you for that super chat donation. There was no question. I just want to make sure that if anyone did a super chat with a question that we didn't miss it before we get going on questions. And again, you never have to do a super chat to ask a question. I will.
But it helps.
I will certainly try to answer it. Here's one from Paul Taylor. We'll get to in just a second. Let me put this one on the screen. But in general, I try to answer all questions. But sometimes I run out of time. There's just too many questions, and I will answer the super chats because it's totally unfair for you to give me money and me not to. But there's a slippery slope there, and I try to respect it. Thanks very much, Paul Taylor. He wants a non-vintage Vox AC C1 or C2 from UK. He'll use live and attenuate. Well, the AC15H and AC30H, which is the head version, comes with an attenuator, which is not bad. I do think it's a little bit drastic. It has 3 presets, like 15 watts or 30 watts, then half of that, and then like 1 watt or 2 watts, which
Is
might
that just
work.
a resistive divider?
It's a reactive load. It's not like full SIR level, but it's quite good for the price point. So if you really need live use and to be able to attenuate, the head version of those might make a lot of sense for you. Half power or like really low wattage. It works pretty well. You have to use the 16 ohm tap to do that. It's not available on the 8 ohm tap. But also, given the weight of the custom series from Vox, it might make sense for you to get just like the AC15 or AC30H, which is still pretty heavy for a head, but then you could use a lighter weight cab. But if you need to use attenuator live with a Vox, I wouldn't, because most attenuators that are good, aside from the one that comes built in, that are really good, cost much more than that amp does. So there's no need to have a $700 amp and a $1,400 aux box or the SIR or the Fryette or the Friedman. It has a very good master volume. It's a crossline master volume. It's the same you're going to find in a matchless. It's going to be fine. You don't have to buy the head version. You can get any custom series, AC15 or 30, and just use the master volume. And as long as you're above 9 o'clock, people aren't really going to hear the difference.
I just got this in. I ordered it, bought it outright. I'm going to give it a teardown. It's the Tube Doctor thing. And I'm going to rip it to shreds, and we're going to put it on the, we're going to do an impedance graph as well, because a lot of these dummy loads and recording loads, attenuators, their impedance curve is nothing like a speaker, and they are destroying amps.
Exactly, and it's hard to know what the good one is unless you tear it down. Like I can trust Fryette, I can trust SIR, I can trust Friedman, and I'm on the fence about the UA aux box. I've heard pros and cons. That I'd be interested to know what you find on that. I'd love for there to be an affordable, really good thing on the market. It's just those two things tend to be mutually exclusive.
I think it's like 500 US, so it's sort of on the lower end, but it looks well built so far.
I would not trust that unless I tore it open or you did. So let me know what you find. I would love to be able to recommend it to people if it's worth it, or to say no, steer clear of that thing. In everything, you get what you pay for. You get what you pay for, and you have to protect your investment. And people will have no problem with an amp for years, and then they get a load box, and all of a sudden they hurt the amp. And they're like, what happened? I'm like, it may not even be a bad load box. It's just you've never run the amp on 10 before because you would have gone deaf, and all of a sudden you're running it full out, and any existing problem in the amp or the tubes gets exacerbated or revealed. But sometimes the box, the reactive load or the attenuator does damage the amp, and you have to know the difference.
I've noticed a trend of people using like plexi heads, non-master volume Marshall 100-watt heads into like dimed into a like a dummy load or a load box. And to me, I think the sound that a dimed 100-watt Marshall head makes is its defense mechanism. So if you are in front of that thing, it's going to hurt, right? So when you put one of these in, all of a sudden you've taken away its defense mechanism, and it's running in a state that it's sort of not designed to be run in.
Or was rarely really running that long, because most people who played those back in the day weren't using everything on 10. And Van Halen,
Yeah.
when he was,
It's
he had
insanity.
he had it Variac down in 90, which is a
Variac, yeah.
lot lower wattage. I mean, voltage to run everything at. So I'm getting
So
to
you
where
can do things to road harden them a bit, like upping the screen grids, that kind of thing. But yeah, just running something that hard you're going to cause some kind of damage.
All right. We're going to start with some questions, but first I have a question for you, Brad, real fast. I'm not trying to rush you or anything, but is it ready yet?
What?
No rush, man. No
Oh,
rush, man.
no,
I was just checking to see if it's ready. You know that's our daily experience.
Yeah, it gives Monday. I'm not telling you which Monday, but Monday.
All right. Let's start with Coldacre's question for you, Brad.
Okay. Yes, I have worked on one. I think it was a deluxe reverb, and it must have been one of their real early ones because they weren't all on the branding and stuff. And they were just really well built Fender clones. And there's plenty of people that do that, but the Achilles price point is actually pretty reasonable for what you get. So I'd say they're okay, but I don't have much of a sample size. This Super 6 behind me, the customer got Achilles to build them a cabinet for a twin, and that is in a twin style cabinet built by Achilles, and I'm going to run through that in one of the videos I'm editing today, but I can't tell you much about the amp designs, but the cabinets are well built. So yeah,
all right.
I think they're in Sydney.
Cool.
Either Sydney or Melbourne. Yeah.
I have no experience, obviously, but I bet Brad's experience is to be trusted. Now, here's another question for Brad.
Ooh, if I was to design a solid state amp, what topology would you use? I'd probably go Class A, B output stage, all jelly bean parts, generic stuff that can be replaced and serviced. Protection on the output stage, safe operating area, protection for the output transistors, all the stuff that makes amps go bang, but not too complex, right? There's a lot of marketing bullshit that happened from some of the major brands in solid state designs like Class H and various different ways to increase efficiency and peak output power without spending too much money, and most of them fail. It's a little bit like the automatic biasing in valve amps. I've never seen anyone effectively and reliably implement that design.
I've never found it necessary.
No, that's right. Yeah. So just some basic safe operating area, output stage. As for the preamp, I'd probably, because I'm a little bit of a metally boy, I'd probably literally go something like the Friedman Dirty Shirley pedal as the front end, and just that into a output stage. Like literally, that's about all you need, plus an effects loop.
Yeah.
Just really basic and just generic jelly bean parts. Like you build it with off the shelf stuff, and you'll be able to keep that thing running in Mad Max world. You know, you'll be the one guy with an amp that still works in Mad Max. You know,
If you got someplace to plug it in.
You'll be the what do they call it? The doof guy that is hanging off the front of the truck.
I've never seen that road to whatever thing, but
Well, that guy that was hanging off the front of Fury Road, the one
something
with
like that. Charlize Theron.
Yeah.
I think of that movie. I need to see that at some point because Charlize Theron. That's the only reason I would ever watch that movie.
She's very good. The guy hanging off the front of the truck is the war song guy. He's got a big electric guitar that shoots fire out the end because why not? He's from Katoomba. He's from the Blue Mountains. His name is Iota, and he was a very popular soloist and band leader in the late 90s, early 2000s. So yeah, he's a local boy.
Well, good on him.
Yeah.
Ted sees using Yamaha HS8s without headphones to listen to this. Well, I've got my HS7s here, Ted, but
Yeah.
I'm going with headphones. Otherwise, you guys would hear feedback and echo for this thing. All right, Brad, Colby Jack's got a question for you here.
Yep. In the thumbnail is a Rivera amp over Venus 6 in the shop for a checkup. Any thoughts on them? I have never seen a Venus 6. I'm not even aware of the amp. There's not many Riveras out here, but the few that I've seen tend to be constructed in a similar manner. The circuit board designs look pretty similar. Good quality design. They look a little bit at first glance like some Mesa stuff. Someone commented while I was tearing one down the other last weekend live stream.
Yeah, they're not the inside of a Rivera.
Nothing like it.
Nothing like a Mesa. No, I had the 100-watt version of. You've got the 50-watt version.
Oh,
okay. Like I said previously, people don't understand what we're pointing out. It's not that it's PCB and therefore it's equivalent. It's like, this is how you do it right. This is how you do it wrong. The Riveras are really well done in my experience. It's just that some of those models that we have are from the 90s, and it's 30 years at this point. It's time for new electrolytics. The voltage regulators, the transistors, they get hot. They have big heat sinks for that reason. A heat sink does not make it bulletproof. It just says this won't be a problem until much later in this part's life. And we're reaching the point where it's that part of the part's life. And components are rated for X number of hours at X degrees, and then they stop. But the amp design is good.
Yeah, they've got through-plated boards. They've got double-sided boards, reasonably thick-looking copper, large pads. The routing is pretty good. All the traces are as short as possible. They have linear regulators. Take notes, Fender. But what
still going without catching on fire after 30 years. The regulator may die, but the board doesn't catch on fire. It's amazing.
Well, the regulator died in this one, so that's what the problem was. So I think the negative 18 volt, which is a bit tricky because 18 volt linear regulators are getting pretty difficult to find. Plus, minus 15, 12, 5, 9, even 6 volts, pretty easy to find. But the weird voltages like 18 volts that are sort of for legacy equipment, it's becoming a bit hard to find. We've got a local supplier called Webb Components, or their retail outlet is Wagner Electronics. They are a strange company. They used to supply TV repairmen back when that was a thing, and they still have a shit ton of old stock chips. So often people will be looking for some weird transistor, or even those STK packages that you get in the really old Yamaha, some of their bass amps, but more importantly, the hi-fi stuff. Pioneers, the 70 stuff, they're like monolithic, well, not even monolithic. They're like a little board housed in epoxy or whatever, bunch of wires coming out. There's lots of fakes on eBay, but they have the genuine ones still, the STKs. I don't know how long it's going to be that they have that stuff for. Obviously, no one's making it, so when they go end of line, they go end of line. But so go back to the regulators in the Rivera. They used plus minus 18 volts, but then they strung the heaters off either rail. So from the minus 18 to the plus 18 in a Christmas tree, Christmas lights. I know what I'm trying to say. Series configuration. And that's a lot of current to be hanging off the regulated line, and there's no need to really regulate heaters. It's just a lot of current hanging off those regulators, and I think that's why they failed. They probably could have run the DC heaters on a separate line.
Well, I'm not saying the Rivera design is perfect. I'm saying in comparison to Mesa, it is godlike. But
having said that amp's like what, from 92 or something, and it's only just played up now. So on a similar note to things just not being available very often, Kevin Oldman's asking about EF86 tubes. They are absolutely worth using for some players. The current production ones do not sound as good as the old ones, and there's way too much made about new old stock out there in most tube types these days. But in this case, the JJ and the Electro-Harmonics do not sound anywhere as good as the old ones. You can still find old ones for $40 to $70 typically at a good tube vendor. Know that they will eventually go microphonic, but it is a specific sound, and if that is the sound you want, it is worth buying. If you are not 100% sure that that's the sound you want, there are a lot of other amps that you can get equivalent level of gain using triodes rather than the pentode. And there are some other pentode tubes out there, 5789s, 51, I don't remember, the one that Gibson used. Can be really good tubes to use, but you can't. They don't retrofit. You have to rewire and change the circuit. Let's move on because that's really specific. But I just want to give you a heads up on that, Kevin. They are probably worth it. Another question for you, Brad. Hi, Brett. I have a pair of JBL/Fender D140Fs, and I'm looking for a cabinet design for a 60s basement. All right, so a pair of JBL Fender. So that's the speakers. Looking for
heavy
a
ass
design.
speakers.
Yeah. Okay. I'm looking for a cabinet design for a 60s basement. So you've already got the head, and you want a combo, or you want a separate. You've already got the basement. You just need a standalone speaker cabinet. if you're building it yourself, I think there's basically a couple of blueprint designs online that you might be able to find. People have sort of reverse engineered them. But generally, when I'm designing a repro cabinet, I'll just get the overall dimensions, use that as my outer footprint, and then just try and find as many photos online. And you can sort of suss out, okay, that grill that looks like it's recessed by about 1/2 inch. We'll get away with that. The back, just follow the design practices on the back, and it's not going to be exact.
I want to give you a friendly argument in this specific case.
Mm-hmm.
If he's talking about an early 60s basement cabinet, the originals would have been closed back with a partition between the two speakers, which was kind of flimsy, just a piece of plywood kind of stapled to the back, and it was filled with fiberglass. And it kind of sounded okay with the Utah speakers that they used, and it had a particle board baffle. If you put JBL D140Fs in there, that particle board's going to last about 3 years.
Yeah.
Less if you have any humidity. So you want that front baffle to be made of birch plywood, void-free.
Or marine ply.
Or some really solid, thick stuff that can handle that weight and stress of those very heavy speakers. Second of all, JBL D140Fs need to be an open back cabinet, or they're just going to blow your ass out with low end. And that sealed partition cab that Fender did sounded terrible with most speakers. Take the partition out, make it open back with a fairly narrow slot, like a 2 to 4 inch slot between the top and bottom panels. So you're almost making a ported cab. That would be a killer sounding thing. So the same dimensions as the 60s basement cab, heavy duty baffle, D140Fs, and open back, but not way open. Or you could do the dumble trick and just do like a porthole behind each speaker if you want for visuals. That will give you the low end without it getting woofy. It'll give you a nice spill on stage, but still be fairly directional, and it'll handle the power of those speakers well.
I didn't ask if he was playing bass or guitar through it, though.
Yeah, most people aren't playing bass through basements anymore, sadly.
You never know,
It's a cool sound, maybe. But I'll tell you another thing. A bass guitar would sound fantastic through that same cab with the D140Fs because that output transformer is not putting out anything below about 50 hertz.
To be honest, I've never had a 60s bassman on my bench. I'm starting to get the classic amps now, as some of the older blokes. Yeah.
I got another one. Actually, I got another one coming any minute. It may make an appearance on the stream.
Oh, yeah?
Brian
Excellent.
Lindsay's dropping off his 67. He said he'd be here about 7.
Ooh,
he might have
nice.
already come because I've had my headphones on. Nikki's going to answer the door for that. So, and then
she's a saint.
Then I got Scott Wilcox is bringing his bassman on the 19th, and then another guy I was spoken to on the phone is going to bring another bassman. I may have 4 60s bassmans at once.
The bassman.
I love the sound of a bass guitar played through a bassman, but a bass guitar played through super reverb or a twin reverb also sounds fantastic because what you're getting out of that is what you're going to hear through most home speakers. You're not going to have that 42 hertz fundamental through most people's playback systems. So what most engineers will do is they'll take a DI that gets the true fundamental, and then you still hear tons of low end through the 2x12 combo, and it's a fantastic sound. Just blend them to taste. Let's go to a fun question from Clyde Broadway, and I'll let you go first.
What's your guy's favorite guitar album of all time? Oh, it needs some context. I guess
the answer is whatever you decide the answer is.
The first one, and it is a bit stereotypical, but the thing that got me into guitar when I was 5 years old was the Shadows, because Dad had the old vinyl copy of the Shadows, and I just played that over and over again, and that's why I became a Strat man, because they were on the album cover. Yeah, they always, very, very good marketing. They always had the silhouettes of the Strat
and the Dakota
stock.
Red.
Yeah, and he's still kicking ass. The old Hank Marvin. He's still playing gigs, but probably I'd say I don't know the actual album name because there's so many compilations. But yeah, one of the early Shadows album. If Dad's watching, he could let us know what the actual album was. So that or Dick Dale stuff, the surf stuff, everything stratty, surfy stuff is what got me into music. And then, I don't know, I guess probably the Shadows, Dick Dale maybe. Can't remember the album names off the top of my head, but
I don't choose albums for guitar sounds. but when an album has very unique guitar sounds, and I love everything else about that, that piques my interest. So I guess the first one that really stood out to me would be Beatles' Revolver, like the Taxman sound. I mean, hell, it had sitar on it as you know. That was on Rubber Soul. Rubber Soul and Revolver kind of blend together. And the American releases are very similar, but I love the sound on that entire album, and the fuzz bass on the word. I guess I'm again lumping Rubber Soul and Revolver, but Zeppelin with the I was never into Whole Lotta Love or Black Dog or the radio hits, rock and roll. I love the album tracks where they were sculpting these great big sonic landscapes. U2's Unforgettable Fire the same way. The Police, Synchronicity, or I guess in terms of sonic textures, Regatta de Blanc and Synchronicity are the two that, most recently, Radiohead's OK Computer or Wilco Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. All those things just align. The songs, the production, the guitar tones, the playing. I don't ever say, "Hey, I'm going to listen to the new guitar player record just to hear."
I never liked the guitar wankery.
But
couldn't even name a
when
song.
someone does something that's interesting sounding and really musical, and it just so happens to require great technique to do that, I'm all down for that. If I'm listening to a Joni Mitchell record and Pat Metheny's on it, I can't play that. Most of the guys who do the stuff can't play that.
Yeah.
But he's not doing that in order to be a flash guitarist. He's expressing an idea that technique allowed him to express. But he had the creativity and his hands were ready to take him on that journey. But I don't go into, I only listen to this genre or I listen to Shrapnel Records or et cetera. You remember Shrapnel Records, Brad?
No.
It was all the shred guitarists in the late 80s from LA.
No, I was more Roadrunner Records, Slipknot and stuff. Machine Head.
Let's see here.
Oh, Michelle's just asked me if I need coffee. I think.
Oh yeah, it's time you get a
I think
coffee
I'll keep
fairy.
that one. I'll keep her.
Jeff Harper. The only reason I didn't include some of the Fender reissues in that is that the prices on the Fender reissues have gone up. In the apps under $1,000 video, I did list. I think that you could get Princeton reverb reissues and maybe occasionally a deluxe reverb reissue. And people do find them. It just to do those videos, I had to use reverb listings. And again, those videos were done more than a year ago, so prices changed. The Fender 65 Princeton and 65 Deluxe Reverb reissues are really good amps that can be made into very, very good amps. And they were going to be right at that price point. And I think they're not quite as reliable long-term in stock form as the AC-15 Custom Series. I don't think that the Marshall DSL 40C and CR, which did well in that, are as well built as the Fenders or the Vox, but they have all those different tonal options. You get a lot for relatively little money. But what Fender has traditionally marketed to you, the Hot Rod series, the Blues DeVille series, the Blues Juniors, the Pro Juniors, hot garbage. Avoid. You should be insulted that they think that's what you want.
And stay away from Tone Masters, whatever you do.
Yeah, or wait till they're on sale for $100 for the ones that are still working.
Because then you can get a really well-made cabinet and rip everything out of it
and a free
set it on
speaker.
fire.
Yeah. Let's see.
Those
here.
cabinets are really good. As far as I know, the Tone Master cabinets are the same cabinets that they use for the reissues. So, there'll be lots of them beside the road. You'll be able to pick up when they blow up.
Yeah, let's see. Jeff Harper, if you're looking at 15, 20 watts, if you're playing blues and rock, there's a great video that Vertex Effects just put up where he's interviewing Dean Parks. And he was asking Dean what he used on this Steely Dan session, what he used on this Stevie Wonder session, what he used on this Joni Mitchell session. And the answer was always this Princeton. And how'd you get the overdrive? I turned it up.
Yep.
And he had a 335 and he had a Princeton. Now, granted, his was an actual 60s, but then again, none of us here happen to be him. So I think the fact that he had a 65 and we have a reissue is not going to be the difference in our playing abilities. But yeah, I mean, a good player into a basic amp. You know, the Kid Charmaine solo was a 335 into 5E3 Deluxe. Someone needs to make it a less expensive version of that, because it is such a basic, simple thing. There's no reason there can't be one of those good for $1,000 that you can go down to Guitar Center buy today. Except it doesn't have reverb, and it doesn't have effects loop, it doesn't have real different channels.
What do you mean?
So the marketing guys are going to say, well, that's cool. We want something that looks like that, but we need to add all these features because the focus group says.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Dean Parks is not going to use whatever the focus group says. He's like, oh, this Princeton always sounds good, not getting any sound that you need. It's not the only amp you need.
Personally, Jeff, I'd probably, if I was you, I would get either a Princeton reverb and get some reliability mods, and I would put a grid stopper on the phase inverter input, and that would be me. Mm-hmm. Or I'll just get a deluxe reverb secondhand and do the reliability upgrades. Yeah,
the volume difference is not huge, especially, and you can have a 22 watt deluxe reverb and a 12 watt Princeton that have the same output level in the room at most settings, depending on what speaker you choose. Because a very efficient speaker in that Princeton and an inefficient speaker in that deluxe, speakers can give you as much as a 6 dB difference in output level. Typically more like 3, but it can be as much as 6. That's doubling the wattage. You can have a Princeton with a highly efficient speaker that's as loud as a 30, 40 watt amp with a typical speaker.
Although Jeff did say for at home, so something with a master volume might be better.
I have shown doing videos with the Deluxe and the Princeton that for clean playing, you just keep the volume really low.
Yeah.
And if you want to have overdrive, use pedals. You get that and a Boss Blues driver or whatever it's called. Is that what it's called? The little blue one that Boss has?
Yeah, the Blues driver, the BD2.
It's nothing fancy, but if you're a good player, that into a clean Fender at low volumes is going to be great. Or you get the AC15 custom series and keep the master volume low. You'll probably still need a pedal to get more into aggressive stuff, but for blues, you can do it just in the amp with the master volume.
Yeah. And let's just get one thing out of the way that I see a lot of people mention online, particularly on the forums and Facebook groups. Toners in the fingers? No, it's not. You play like Kerry King with a fucking Princeton then.
Well, I was talking to a very good player about that.
You got to be in the ballpark.
Tone is in the hands, but the amp has to be working with those hands. And you gave an example of where the amp would be working against what the hands are trying to accomplish. Or
your Sony camera just focused on your hand when you said hand.
Well, yeah, because I put it up here.
AI, man, it's taken over.
The AI's in here. I raised my hand when I said that. But also, I gesture a lot. I'm sure I'm Italian somewhere. So yeah, Kerry King through a Princeton will not be able to play his Slayer riffs.
It would be funny to hear, though.
Yeah, but among the amps which would be along the lines of getting his sounds, he's going to sound a lot better through the following metal amps than he would through these other metal amps, because those other metal amps are going to, the attack's going to be wrong, or it's going to be too fizzy. Even if it sounds good to the listener, he's going to be thinking, I need to change something about this. I'm just not quite happy with this. So he's thinking, he's observing himself play. He's listening to the sound and being critical of himself. He's not in the act of creating. He's not in the act of playing the music. He's in the act of observing himself. And the thing is, have you ever, for people who, the best analogy I can give people is if you've ever been playing a video game and you suddenly you realize, hey, I'm doing really good, typically that's when you die. That's when you die. Because you stopped playing the game and you started watching yourself play the game. You're observing yourself. And so the act of observing yourself is different than the act of what you were doing before. And you have to be in the mind, when you're playing music, you have to be in the doing, not the observing. And so if the amp is giving the player anything that they don't want to hear or feel, they can't, those hands can't do everything that they would otherwise do, because they stop and they're critical. And it's a different mindset. So yes, tone is in the hands, and you got to get all the obstacles out of the way. And at the end of the day, that's what I try to do when voicing amps for people. Like, if the guy's into Van Halen, I'm not giving him an Allman Brothers voicing, and vice versa. Those are for instances.
Yeah, because if tone was in the fingers, every amp would suit every player.
If tone was in the fingers, I would not need an amp. I could just go, ooh, tone. So be it. On that note, here's a question for you from Paul Taylor.
What's my go-to amp? Low power Marshall. I've got a little TMB 18 that I built years ago, and that's my favourite at the moment. Could do it a little bit more saturation. But yeah, just a Marshall with a nice hot front end on it. Some value changes in the cathode of the V1 and 2. But yeah, I actually tried Mesa Boogies, right? My first big amp was a Triaxis with a friggin' Simulclass 290 in a rack.
I'm sorry.
And you had one too, didn't you?
No,
And
I've just fixed a whole bunch of those fuckers.
No, that was 6 that had one. But luckily, I was smart enough to sell it before it failed. So I thought something's got to be wrong with this thing. It's not right. So I'll sell it. I ended up doing a trade for a Mesa DC10, a 2x12 100 watt combo, and it sounded the same. And I'm just like, what? Is there something wrong with me? Like, what's going on? So
maybe there was
years ago,
maybe there was something right with you.
Well, I started just building circuits, and I thought, fuck it, let's build an amp. And very simple. I think the first amp I ever built was an AX84 little 5 watt thing, and it sounded way better than the Mesa. I'm like, there's like 6 parts in this thing. Like, how does this sound better than that? Like, because I thought that Mesa was a high class, really well engineered,
Right.
finely tuned, well built product, right? Art and engineering. And a dude in his garage with half a dozen parts and a fucking 8-inch speaker sounded better. I'm like, what the hell? So that's what led me down the amp building. Because I realised that, what we're being told isn't true. And I've actually got that little amp right here. Just one sec.
Sure. No plumber butt.
There she is. It's got the brother label.
That's the first one you ever built?
Yeah, I think so. That was the first proper one.
Well, you need to do a video showing us what that sounds like, or hook it up on the bench behind you real quick, and
I can do that.
The 57 will pick it up.
Come out of it.
That'd be cool too. That'd be cool too.
I've purposely not changed it at all because I want to open it every 10 years and laugh at what I did.
Well, just bring it up. Turn it on and let's see what happens. It's all for the stream, man. It's all for the stream.
I've got the 57.
It'll pick it up just fine. While Brad's setting that up, I want to say thank you, Matt Johnson, and we appreciate you very much. And we'll take both the beer and the cup of coffee. Let's see. I'm going to scroll down while Brad gets that set up.
All right, moment of truth.
Awesome. Here we go.
Will it smoke? Turn the standby off. No lights. Oh, it helps if you turn the PowerPoint on.
Yeah, is it plugged in? Have you tried turning it off and back on again?
You can hear the hum.
Yeah, you want to move that like 10 feet from that mic before you play into it. Otherwise,
yeah, especially with the gain maxed out.
Yeah, I mean when I do the things when I'm streaming and I have an amp here over there, I've got the amp at like 2 and it picks up just fine.
Just grab a pick. One moment.
Oh, he's getting a pick. He's fancy.
I didn't really plan for this.
Everyone, he's fancy. Get your pinkies up in the air. He's fancy. Dead time is a sign of professionalism.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
All right, let's hear Brad's first ever build. Hey, sound. What speaker's in there?
God, I'm out of tune and everything.
What speaker is in there?
That's an MOD 8-inch thing.
Okay, that's what I was hearing. That 8-inch mid-range. I gotta say, for a first build, it still works. That's the biggest praise I can give most first builds.
Yeah, there's a bit of hum there. I think I've got a ground loop or two. So I'm intentionally not fixing it though, because I want to keep it as a time capsule.
Oh, I don't blame you. Just, this is for fun, folks. And remember, he got better. That's right.
But look at that Tolex work though.
That's beautiful. Well, you did do joinery. That should have been perfect.
No corner protectors around here, buddy. Nice.
And the very fancy label maker. Hey, Chris Butler. I talked to John. I sent him. I replied to his email. Two emails. I replied to one, and I replied to the second. Haven't heard back from him yet. But that whole UK Memphis time zone difference, I'm sure I'll hear from him tomorrow. So thank you for that. But John's been great to talk to. Carl, all the distortion that we want is exactly what the designers were trying to keep out of there. I would not replace a Fender Twin for recording in a studio, Ike, if that is the appropriate sound. If you want a different sound, there are different amps, but for the sounds that a Twin does, you can change it up and say, I'll do the super reverb, but the biggest difference you're going to hear between the two is 2x12 versus 4x10. I don't mean to be diminishing, but people are like, what's the best alternative to a twin reverb? An even better twin reverb? It is a good thing. You have a reissue versus an original. The original is going to sound, or has potential to sound better. If you have a 76 versus a 66, the 66 has the potential to sound even better. But at the end of the day, a good condition twin reverb is an excellent thing. It's just so damn loud.
Maybe that's the point, though. There might be something wrong with your Twin if it's not satisfying you. The amount of particularly Silverface Fender amps that come in here that are just absolutely destroyed by previous techs. It's just heartbreaking. If you watch my channel, most of the repairs are just rectifying other techs.
Oh, yeah. Same with the the stuff I do is either someone hacked it up because they just want to get it off their bench real fast, or has never had any work and it's been 50 years. But I have to remember, for me to build a Fender Twin, even to the level of a 76, that's a $3,500, $4,000 amp. So to get something as well built as that today, you have to spend that. If you buy an alternative $1,200, you're going to get something pretty good. Or you can spend $400, $500, bring the old Twin back from the dead, and you're going to be right back at that $3,500, $4,000 level amp. Usually, unless something has catastrophically happened, the old Fenders should always be restored because it's the best use of your money. You can always get a master volume installed if necessary, if it's too loud. But, the fact that this thing came in, the 66 basement, this thing came in, it looked like it was just going to die literally on camera in front of us. It's going to be magnificent for another 50 years when I'm done with it. Well, I'll say
that
20.
Thing produced signal.
Yeah, that just shows how rugged the design is.
When you powered it up, I'm like, what? And then it produced signal. I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Well, I did know that the filter caps were okay. And you notice, I don't know if you obviously saw, but I don't think people will necessarily understand the importance of the step that I took, whereas not only did I look at the filter caps, I measured the diodes in the rectifier and the bias before I powered it on. If you had just gone to a store and seen this thing, oh man, that's all rusted out, it's $100, I'll take a chance on it, brought it home and powered on, those diodes would have shorted out and then you would blow in a fuse. You'd think, oh man, this thing's so bad, I got took. It's just, like you said, intelligence versus experience. I don't think I was being particularly clever. I have just made that mistake enough times in the past. I don't choose to make that mistake anymore. I only make new and exciting mistakes. That's my motto, man.
Don't we all?
Here's another one for you, Kevin. Here's another one for you, Brad. Sorry, I was looking at the name Kevin because
transistor or IC package power amp. I assume you're talking about the output stage. I would go with. It depends what the purpose is. If you're trying to hit a certain level of efficiency, you got no choice but the new Class D driver chips, which are insane. Like the I can't think of the numbers right now, but the TDA whatever's they're like 400 watt Class D drivers in a tiny little chip, and it's got heat sinks top and bottom, which often the manufacturers don't realise, so they only heat sink the top. They are ridiculously powerful little units. Then you've got some brands like Markbase, for example, that will use discrete FETs on the output stage, driven by a purpose-specific gate driver chip, they call it, which is basically does all the compensation, all the driving of the MOSFETs, and the MOSFETs do the heavy lifting. That's probably a good spot. The problem with Class D stuff, it's leveling out a bit now, but the technology advanced so quickly that chips only had a shelf life or a production life of about 5 years. So you produce an amp, you buy the chips. A year later, that amp would get manufactured using those chips. Then it would go to a warehouse somewhere for 6 months. Then it would sit in a showroom for a year till someone bought it. The amp's already like 2 years old by the time you actually take it home, new in box. And then you get a year warranty, and then maybe 2 years after that, the chip's obsolete. No one's making them anymore.
Yeah, availability is the first sign of obsolescence.
Yeah, and then what you might want to do is if you're gonna get a module, or if you are a nerd like me, you jump on DigiKey and you have a look at the chips and see if they're still available. See if they're available from a major manufacturer, and if they've got 1,000 in stock, like that's sketchy. If they've got like 200,000, I think you're good. But it's leveling out a bit now, and now there's a couple of chips that are still held on. So some of the TDAs, they're still in production. They have been for like 5-6 years. They probably will be for another 5-6 years. But there's just an inherent, when technology is advancing very quickly, there's going to be a fairly quick life cycle of products. So in that case, you could go for a transistor and a gate driver chip, like a discrete output stage and a gate driver chip. Because some of those, they're slowly developing some standards. So similar to an op-amp, there might be a standard footprint for a gate driver chip, and their next generation will be part of the same family, and it may be backwards compatible. So that's probably, if I was designing one, that's the way I'll go. If you're talking about buying an amp, I don't think it really matters, because if you're going with a solid state amp that's what am I trying to say? That's sort of a consumer level amp. It's not going to have a really long lifespan anyway. But if I was designing, I'd probably go gate driver and discrete MOSFETs for the output.
Well, flip side of that,
Class D.
Flip side of Class D realistically is that if it does fail, $125 gets you, at least in America, gets another ICE module, and it's 1 hour for tech to swap it out if they know how to read the jumpers. So it's not ideal, but it's fairly cheap to replace. At least it is now while they're still in production. Let's see how it goes 5-10 years from now, because they're going to have newer, better versions, and this generation is not going to stick around. So that's the long-term issue. Chris Butler is asking about Kinmans. I have the Mark II traditionals, which I love, but that 17, 18 years ago. So if he's gotten better since, I'm almost scared to know, because I love those so much. I'm never going to change them unless those fail. And I looked at getting Kinmans for some of my other guitars, but they are very expensive, and I did not have the money at the time, so I tried the Mojo Tones, which I like a lot, and I think they're better than the DiMarzios. I don't think they're nearly as good as the Kinmans. And I used to have, back when, before 2001 happened and I almost went bankrupt, I had these pickups in this guitar. I had the blues set in a 62 reissue Strat, and I had the 48 set in a Tele, beautiful Tele custom with a sunburst. I want to get one of those again someday. And I thought all three of them sounded great and very different from each other. But I've not had a chance to play the Kinman game since, and I don't know what he's got on the market now. And that was a very long answer, and Brad, sorry to make you listen to it. Brad, you're in Australia. Have you tried them? And if not, what's wrong with you? Because they've got to be cheaper for you there. Are we still going live? Because Brad's audio went away.
Sorry, I must have bumped the mute.
Yeah, you muted yourself. Sorry.
Oops. Yeah, I've never seen Kinman pickups as far as I know.
Well, he's in Australia. You should find out.
Yeah, I should try some out. I've got some JJs here. There's a guy in Melbourne, Ben Bailey pickups, and I haven't tried them yet though. We'll see how they go. He's got like a Gilmore-esque set, which has a steel plate on the bottom of the bridge pickup, so that'll be interesting. I've got a couple of just parts casters here that I'm gonna set up and maybe do some videos. So I've got to get my playing up to scratch though before I can do any demo videos.
Oh man, if I use that as an excuse, I would never get anything done. Though I am getting all those DI clips together, so I ironically won't have to play as much in the future.
Yeah.
Clyde got a Bartell era Tone King Royalist. Why would you be scared? Mark makes excellent devices. His toys are phenomenal. I have reservations about some of the BAD models. I have no reservations about the Bartell. And I hope to have some very good news about the BAD Tone King iteration in about a week, but I don't want to get into particulars now. But I have found that, at least in this case, they are doing one of my customers, who's also one of their customers, a great service. So more to come. I think we're going to have shiny, happy feelings about the at least this instance of an issue with a BAD Tone King. Well, Brian Lindsay, the guy who did all the telly stuff the other day, is here to drop off his guitar. So I'm going to turn the chat over to Brad for a bit, and I'll be right back. Let's see here, there, and here's Brad.
If I had a Bartell amp, or if I had the budget for a Bartell amp, I'd buy two. I'd have one to play, and I'd have one taken apart to show you the beauty of the manufacturing of the things. They are insane. I don't know if you guys have seen his construction techniques. He's sort of got custom CNC routed turret boards which have little cutouts for the valves. I think the whole principle behind it is to get the signal path as short as possible. So it's sort of all the components like fan out from the valve socket, and then he even routes the wires through custom, like I think 3D printed little insulating posts that he distributes through the amp. So everything's just, the guy must be just on another level, like Rain Man level amp builder. The inside of him is just glorious. But yeah, it's got a price to match, doesn't it? But you know, that's a heirloom amp. It's something you'd pass down for generations. So if I start answering questions, Lyle's probably going to pull up the same questions, so we'll probably double hit him. But I think he'll be back in a tick. Yeah, they are insanely tidy. Yeah, they're things of beauty. Alright. So someone said quad reverb's a unicorn. Are they particularly rare? I've seen a couple of them. There's one at the local guitar shop. I think they got as like part of a deceased estate or whatever, and it's in a terrible shape. But I've been trying to get that out of them. We're sort of, you know, every time I go there and it's still there, I'm like, oh, yes, you might want to think about selling me that amp, champion, so I can restore it. You know, and they've got a Moody G40 too, which is a Australian version of a sort of like a Bassman topology. I'm trying to focus as much as I can on Australian manufactured amps because I'm starting to get quite a few through. So yeah, I'd like to see a lot more of them. Yeah. He's back.
Yeah, Brian dropped off this exotic XTC he has. He used his other telly on the video 68 Custom.
Oh, look at the figuring on the fretboard.
Poor man has an Underwood that he used for that video, but he also has this XTC. Wow. And I think I don't remember if he wanted me to shield it or do the 50s thing. I said I'd call him tomorrow, figure it out, yeah. And Brad will know what I'm talking about. I don't ever care about flame for the sake of what it looks like, but that is an indication of perfectly quarter sawn maple. That is going to be a very nice stable neck. It's another one of those
roasted too.
It is, and it's a Polonia body. So this thing may weigh 3 pounds on a wet day.
Oh, wow.
On a fat day, it's about 3 pounds. So, and I guess it's a shell pink. So I guess I'm glad I wore this shirt. But I'm not going to plug it in for you guys because you guys have heard Brian play his Underwood, and you guys have heard Joe Restivo play his exotic XTC, so there's no need for you to hear me doing it through an app. But I hope I didn't interrupt what you guys were talking about. It's kind of weird interrupting my own stream.
Yeah, what are you doing here, man? Go away.
All right.
So buying timber, a while back I built a neck for a local guitarist, a friend of mine, Jordan Thomas. If you want to check out Jordan Thomas Trio, he actually played at Michelle and I's wedding with a 6-piece band. We saw the 3-piece, just a jazz band, but rockabilly-ish sort of stuff. They start with jazz, go to rockabilly later on. But then my brother saw some videos of them with 3-piece brass, and he said, we've got to get the brass. That makes it party time, right? So we got these guys in. But I was restoring his... he was making an L7 replica out of an L5, and the previous guy built the neck and did a horrible job. So I was sort of brought in to see if I could repair it.
I was so damn knocked out by the job you did on that thing. That was masterful. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. It was probably 100 hours work or more. If you are set up to build these things, you make all the jigs and everything and you keep producing them. But to make a one-off, it's a crazy amount of work because you've got to make all these jigs and everything and do for just one neck, right? And there was like, what? There was like 9 pieces of timber in that neck or something. And then all the inlay, the purfling, the binding, the mother of pearl inlays for the logo and the flower pot and all of that. So yeah, it was a lot of work, but I was trying to get it ready for our wedding so we could play the guitar at our wedding, but I ended up getting it ready like the month after, which sucked. But it was La Nina, so trying to find a day when it wasn't raining to spray was almost impossible. It seems to rain every weekend here, which is right when I try to spray paint. But yeah, they're amazing. So anyway, when I went to buy the slab of timber, it looked a bit like that. Not quite as flamed as that, but there was literally one piece of timber in the whole like timber storage yard. This isn't like a timber racks out in the rain. This is like it feels a bit like a church for timber. It's Trend Timbers. It's out near Windsor in Western Sydney here. And I was looking everywhere and I'm thinking, there's no slabs here that are big enough and figured enough to do the job. There's literally not a piece of timber in Australia that I can buy to get this job done. And I'm sort of walking around going through this timber for about 2 hours, literally 2 or 3 hours. And then the sun comes out through the clouds. And it was like the scene out of Blues Brothers when the light comes in and they're in the church and the sun beamed on this friggin' slab of timber that was standing up in the center of the room where all the wood turning stuff is, so not really where it belonged, and it was shining on the fucking piece of maple, and that's the slab that I bought.
Nice.
It was long enough by about 50 mil either end. It had slight checking on the end, so the cracks were only about 20 mil deep, so we just got the neck out of it, but I had to make sure that I sealed those ends up. They should have sealed them with wax when they cut it, but they didn't, so it cracked on the ends. And luckily we stopped that just in time. I got it cut cut by a massive bandsaw. There's a place called Swadlings which have a bandsaw. The blade and the bandsaw is literally like 12 inches deep, and it's the steel's about 2 mil thick or something ridiculous. And they run this piece of timber down, split it down the guts, and then I had to let it season for like 18 months, right? Let it stabilize, because if you build the neck and the moisture's not right, all those laminations are just going to come apart again in the future. Oh, yeah. So it was like 18 months from finding the slab to actually cutting it and getting it ready to...
That's a rush job then.
Yeah, it was. It's literally... Yeah, and he was getting pretty impatient. I can't blame him for that, but I'm glad that we did take the time, because now it's nice and stable. I don't have to rebuild him another neck in 6 months when it all cracks. Anyway.
Oh, it was a beautiful job. I watched the entire thing with my jaw on the floor. So I don't do fine woodworking stuff, and that was fine as woodworking.
It wasn't fun until the end.
and then you get. I heard the guy playing it. He was a brilliant player.
Yeah,
Emmett Otter. Your question on your new AC15C1, if it being splatty in the top boost, you probably need to get to learn the tone stack on that. Watch a bunch of my videos on Voxes. That tone stack If you don't know what you're doing, you can make it sound terrible. So you got to learn the tricks, but there's no reason for it to be getting a fuzz octave sound on the neck pickup, though it could be a sign you have a bad preamp tube. Remember, the preamp tubes in that amp are fairly inexpensive ones that they choose mostly for their likelihood to still work by the time they travel 3,000 miles on a shipping container to a guitar center near you. They're not chosen for their toneliness. They usually are two Piz vanes followed by electroharmonics, followed by two generic Chinese output tubes and current production ones. And of those tubes, the one I would least trust would be the Electroharmonics Yellow Label 12AX7. So never be afraid to try a different 12AX7 in that thing. But let's go on. Let's see. I'm going to take another 7-minute break. And when we come back, Brad, assuming you have some more time for us, because we got a lot of questions to get through.
All the time in the world, mate.
Let's do at
It's
least
either that or mow my lawn. I'm trying to avoid that, so...
Yeah. Let's take another 7-minute break. Everyone get another drink or do what you need to do.
We'll try and race through the questions a bit when we come back, because there's a few building up. And if you've asked a question, don't bother repeating it, because we'll get to it. We're working down the list, and we're too busy talking shit. So we'll get there.
And I'll get every super chat up on the screen when we get back from intermission. Then we're going to go through as many of the other questions as possible. And I don't mean to be classist or elitist about that. It's a slippery slope. Like I said, I want to make sure that if someone does that, they're not taken for granted. But none of you are taken for granted. Just there's only so much time and so many questions. Yeah. So be back in 7, guys. we're going to get back into it real fast. I just want to acknowledge all the super chats have come in before we get back into it, and I wanted to address something which has been bothering me. I could not figure out why in hell I called Brad Bradford when I was introducing him. I was thrown off a little bit by the fact that when I went to the regular screen, it was him instead of me because I'd hit the wrong button yesterday. But then I realized I was out there on my porch just a minute ago. I spent like 30 minutes yesterday talking to a friend about Branford Marsalis. And so I said Brad and I added Ferd to it. That's how this brain works. I've known Brad for years now. I always call him Brad. Always Brad. I know he's a Bradley, but I Bradforded him. See, I didn't mean to remove you, Jack. Thank you very much, Jack. Whom to trust? Trustworthy techs in Pittsburgh. I don't know if I know someone in Pittsburgh. I know someone in Columbus, Ohio, which is not too far. Who's that, Brad? I can hear Brad if you can't. Actually, no, I can't right now. He's muted in sound levels, even though before I had the off audio. Brad may know someone near Pittsburgh. I know someone near Philadelphia. Send me an email, or put it in the question in the comments here, and I'll get back to you after this in the comments because I know a guy in Philadelphia and I know a guy in Columbus, Ohio, and Brad might know someone closer to Pittsburgh. We don't know everyone. We just know an awful lot of good people. And thank you very much. I'm gonna get Brad in on this so he can react to this stuff too. I'm sorry, I'm still learning how to run this show. Jerry London, $10 for a swear jar for Lyle. $10 for Brad to teach Lyle how to swear. Brad's got nothing to teach me. I just keep it off my channel most of the time. He may be Australian, but I'm from Memphis. And people say, you swear like a sailor. And I say, no, I swear like a goddamn admiral. Let me go back up to the fresh questions. And that is all the super chats. And I appreciate each and every one of you, but I don't want this to be the paid thing. It's a slippery slope, like I said. Let's see here. There was a question Wes had about you working on synths. And I'm trying to get to it.
I'm just looking up the Pittsburgh tech in the meanwhile.
Groovy. Let's see. Sorry, this thing is so hard to keep track of the scrolling. Where was that, Wes? Sorry. See, my mod is otherwise occupied, so I need a producer. I need someone who will do really complicated stuff for free.
So Pittsburgh's a bit of a dry area, actually. If you're talking Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
There's a couple of there's John Gurry in Columbus, Abel Audio, and Rob Chafe from Mad Cow Amplification. If you can make it to Columbus, I'd suggest Rob.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah, Rob in Columbus. That's not too far.
Bit of a day trip.
I know a guy. I need to see which guy it is. But I knew Columbus, and Rob D'Antonio was right outside of Philly.
Columbus is closest.
Yeah, I mean I know that Philadelphia and Pittsburgh are not close together, but I'll tell you what. If you were to get in touch with the guy in Columbus, he might know a guy in Philly because he's going to know people within his area.
Hey, I know a guy.
Yeah, he knows a guy. All right, let's get to Wes now, Brad. Here you go.
All right, since I haven't worked on a Juno or a Prophet, 6 de Saint Hilaire at Dr. Gear is the man to talk to about that. He is a wealth of information of those synths. I have mostly got so far in for repair the synths that are most popular on the market. So when I say synths, I'm generally talking digital pianos like the Yamaha P series, that kind of thing. I had a lot of them are at school as well, so you get like thick shakes poured in them and stuff, which is great because they bring it in like 6 months after, and it's grown new forms of life that humankind doesn't know about yet. But the Junos and the Prophets tend to be a bit more like collectors these days and very, very high end. Six and I were discussing making some new contact boards from scratch for the Junos because they are very expensive synths and everyone's out of parts now. Like even the specialist guys that have every single part that you could possibly hope to find. It's like trying to find parts for an old English car or something these days. There's none around anymore, and we might find a little market for making some circuit boards with contact strips, hard gold plating, that kind of thing. We might be able to get around the engineering challenges by using modern techniques of PCB manufacture. We might have to do a bit of testing on that first, just like stress testing. We might have to make a repeat jig just to see that the gold doesn't wear out, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's like a million of our plans. We've got to put them all into play and stop talking about them. But
Yeah,
I'd love to see some Junos and Profits come in.
I'd love to watch you do that. David Pekarski, quick answer. He's asking, is there a better circuit between the Fender Bassman AB165 and AC568? Whether a circuit is better or worse is wholly subjective. The AB165 has got some crippling deficits as far as its noise ratio and the transition from clean to dirty. My preference of the 60s Bassmans after 63 is what you will have found on my channel previously. If you look there are a lot of in the Vintage Fenders playlist and then individual playlists for a Bassman project, and you will see happening to the 66 behind me and possibly the 67 that was just dropped off with this exotic. I like to take the AB165 preamp, keep it stock, move the V3B plate to the supply for V3A, and then give it the AA864 phase inverter and output section. And that is the best 60s Bassman that Fender never made but almost did.
I made one.
There you go. You get the best output section and a really cool preamp section with tons of gain. And you'll see me do that on this 66, and there are examples on my channel and on Brad's channel, I believe. That, to me, of the 60s Bassman is the way to go. But, there's nothing wrong with the AC568.
The biggest thing with the AC568 is the hybrid bias sort of set up on the output.
That's just,
as far as I know,
remove those stupid resistors and you're good.
Yeah. As far as I know, you can rip that out as long as you clean up the lead dress quite a bit, because motorboating was an issue. So they've got two, I think, 150 ohm 7 watt resistors on the cathodes, one per valve to ground, and then and that is to create like a point to put a 5 microfarad electrolytic from non-polarized electrolytic from cathode to cancel out low frequency motorboating. And like a lot of those problems from that era with Fender,
there's solutions in search of a problem.
Yeah, it could have just been sorted by better lead dress, but I think at the time they were trying to ramp up production and they had to rely on less skilled hand labor. So these were the solutions that they could implement to counteract the variances in manufacture. So
yeah, whereas the guys running the show before then would have just said, all right, if you make this mistake again, you're canned. Now smoke more cigarettes and build more amps.
Yeah, that's right. Why aren't you smoking a cigarette?
Don Randall would not have put up with all that nonsense being added to the output. He was just like, yeah, we showed you how to build it. Everyone else can build it. Build it.
Like
it's probably not a great working environment, but I've seen the pictures of everyone like shirtless and sweating with giant industrial fans, in California. But they made wonderful stuff. Let's see. Here's a good one. And Magisterium Guitars. What voltage rating margin above the one used by the circuit do you prefer? Just a step above. I would want, ideally, 30% above. We are limited by what is available. So sometimes I'm like, okay, I got 450 volts loaded. It's a 500 volt cap. Unloaded, it's like 485. I'd rather have a 600 volt cap. But given that when it's unloaded, there's very little current there, that's probably fine. If I have the room, and that I'd put in a series node and then get 700 volts, 800 volts there, but at 900 volts even. But, that's fine. It's a time when you see like, I got a 400 volt cap and they got 385 volts loaded. That's stupid. Or like those Morgan PR30s, like, oh, it's a 450 volt cap with 480 volts across it when it's loaded. So in an ideal world, I'd aim for 30% minimum above unloaded. That's not always possible. And then you have to know what the current draw is in that unloaded worst case scenario. Brad, do you agree or disagree?
Absolutely.
You absolutely disagree. Cool. This would be a great video.
I'd aim for at least 20% to 30%, and that would be factoring in me on the Variac going up to 250 volts. When I set an amp up, the main reason I got the Variac is to test on first power up that I haven't screwed anything up. Also to test at lower voltages where a short might be without blowing a fuse, because fuses are expensive. Not really, but you know, Dad doesn't like using a Variac. He says that's what fuses are for, and he calls me a pussy for using a Variac. But the other purpose of them is to simulate line variance. So they do go beyond the current. It's an auto transformer, but you can get higher than the mains voltage. They overwind them a bit. So my one goes up to 260 volts if you feed it 240. So here there's quite a bit of variance in line voltage. However, at my shop here, when I first moved in, we were getting 255 volts like quite often, and particularly in summer when a cool change comes through. They've ramped up, you know, the capacity of the coal-fired plant out west here, and then a cool change comes through. Everyone turns off their air conditioner, but they can't ramp down the power generation that quickly. So for a while there's excess capacity and the voltage goes up. We'd often measure 255. So I'd generally set it to about 250 worst case scenario and just see that everything's still happy.
It's an important point I should have brought up because we have a big variance here. Proportionally probably about the same, even though,
Yeah. I actually quote on my job sheets what voltage all the measurements are taken at. So if anything changes, I can put that amp back on the bench and quickly say, okay, something's changed because it's not sticking to the measurements that it was when it was here 2 years ago. So keeping records like that is a little bit of arse coverage there, but most of it's for myself, just to know what I did because my memory is pathetic. So...
Well, covering your ass is half of this business. I want to say something voltage tech related, but this is the second exotic XTC telly I've had in the last 2 weeks, and then that
same color as my cup.
There you go, and that Underwood. And all three of these have just been phenomenal guitars. The Underwood, I think, is a USA G custom neck that he shapes, and I don't know if anyone's building anything for exotic, if they're doing it all in house. But I want to say I've been doing the guitar game longer than Brad's been alive, I think, and I have played an awful lot of guitars. And it is amazing what you can get now that you could never get before. To get a Telecaster as good as either of these exotics or the Underwood, back in the day, you would have to find a 50s or 60s one. And you would have to play like 3 dozen 50s or 60s to get one that felt like these. And if you could get them, even in the 80s, as a percentage, when you factor inflation, they were more expensive then than this is new now, and to get what this is essentially a 52 telly that's dried out and it's really resonant. If you find one that plays great, that's a $40,000 or more instrument if it's not been refinned terribly, and if it's been refinned, it's a $25,000 to $30,000 instrument. The fact that we can go and get one of these things for what I guess they're probably $3,000-$4,000, which seems like so much, but when you adjust for inflation in 1963, that was $400, something like that. It's a good time to be buying guitars. The thing that gets me is that people are so used to paying as little as possible for amps that they'll spend tons on guitars. So you'll get guys with $10,000 custom shop Gibson Les Pauls, which are rarely as good as this thing here, plugging into a Blues Junior because they don't want to support the amp side of things, and the amp is just as, if not more important than the guitar. Here into Thurant, but also I'm not sponsored by Exotic. I'm not sponsored by Underwood, but I can tell you independently that these are damn good guitars.
Just talking about the sponsorship thing, I don't think I could get a sponsorship if my life depended on it, because I would rip it apart and scrutinize everything about it. So
I think you get
no
one
would-
from a Scotch. Get a Scotch.
Yeah, I'd be open to that.
Yes. Brad's Guitar Garage, brought to you by like one of those Scotch names that's like a paragraph long. Yeah. It's like that town name. It's like that town name in Wales that English weathermen fear having to pronounce.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, if anyone sent me stuff, I think they'd be afraid to send me things because there'd be an implicit. If you're getting stuff without paying for it, there's an implicit onus on you to give a glowing review. Whereas if I ripped it apart and scrutinized everything, they'd probably either try and shut your channel down.
Yeah.
Or,
speaking of which,
at least
we
not
have
giving you
one thumb down. And I just
do
want
we?
to say
There's always that one guy.
It's always
I don't
that one
know who
guy.
it is.
I don't know who you are. I just want you to know, go fuck yourself. What a ridiculous thing
No,
to do.
I don't
Because
care.
no, here's the thing. By doing that, you just told YouTube that you feel strongly about this video, and that, from my
Yes,
perspective, that helps
any
my channel.
engagement's good.
So thank you for helping me, and go fuck yourself.
That's why there's these channels that just have controversy on them because negative engagement still primes
Engagement,
up the
yeah.
algorithm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you see these videos with 50% dislikes, and that's probably.
It just seems such a weird thing to do. I'm going to show him. I'm going to dislike it.
It's a
Likes
little bit
help,
like the.
but dislikes are just kind of sad. I never dislike videos. I see crap all the time. I just stop watching it.
Yeah, it's like when you get served a bad meal from a restaurant. I don't go online and give them a bad review. I just never go back, right?
Yeah. Well, if it gives me diphtheria, I'll let people know. But
Yeah.
let's move on
It
to
could have been a
positive.
drunk mistake though, as Womb Rater, which is one of the very interesting names. He said maybe it was a drunken mistake. So yeah, we'll assume that because it is late over there, and you guys are probably on the juice.
Well, here's one from Clyde. Which amp maker would you most like to interview? Now, I'm not going to answer that myself, though. I'll let Brad. But I want to know from you guys what amp makers you would most like to hear me interview, because I already have some lined up in future episodes of Technical Difficulties. I've got pretty much the next year pretty much scoped out. This is not about name dropping. This is about interesting people. I've got some really interesting people, many of whom you guys will know, or your favorite players will know. So, but you guys tell me who you want to see on this channel, and maybe I can make some of that happen. Maybe it already will be in the cards. But Brad, who would you like to interview? Whose brain would you like to pick?
Scotty just picked it. Randall Smith.
Only if it's in person, and Marquis of Queensberry rules
And
apply.
he can't get away. And he, if you can't get away.
Oh, well, now we know who the dislike was.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, Randy can take whoever Gibson gave him to buy that company and go do something else. I think he's working on patenting the wheelbarrow. So, so you get the joy of seeing what the real time responses are. I don't get to see that till afterwards.
I'm just looking at the phone here so I can see if audio drops out or anything.
Yeah, I have the iPad, but I'd have
take
to
heed of that, mate.
Squint. I have it there. I can see that we're still going, but I have to squint to see if it's much. Paul Rivera. I could get Paul on here eventually.
Nice.
I bet, and I bet I could get Stevie Fryette. And I know that people kept trying to drum up drama between me and Steve, and I think that life is too short.
Drama things.
I think we'd be just fine together. And I think he would learn that the thing that I said that he so strongly disagreed with. If you really look at his video, he made the same points I did. This difference being that I was saying I would not reform caps for someone else's amp to go on tour, and he said I would not do this if I was going on tour, but I would do this on my own amp. And I'm like, but he's a tech. If it goes, he'll know the warning signs. He can change it out. He can take that chance. The average person. Yeah. So anyway, I don't want to get into that. Bruce Egnator is definitely on the list for me.
I love Brucey boy. Brucey is so. I'll just call him Brucey. I don't know if he even likes that. He just followed my Facebook page yesterday. I was quite chuffed.
Good.
It's only been like 5 years, Bruce. You took your time, mate. But he is very patient with people on the amp forums. He is very, very helpful.
He's a really nice guy. Doug Hoffman, I don't know if I know Doug a little bit. I bet he'd do it. I just don't know whether I don't get the sense that he's set up to do this. Lee from Victory. Well, it'd be quite a coup for the channel if I could get Lee from Anderton's. But he is an amp company part owner or investor. That is still up in the air where it is. He is not a designer, so I don't know if we'd have much of a conversation about that. And I don't want to get into that nonsense. Mitch Colby's definitely on my list. Dan Torres,
Mitch,
no.
We're going to leave heaps of people out.
Yeah, I can't name everyone. Randall Aiken, I'd love to have on, but I don't know that I'm smart enough. I don't know that I'm smart enough to interview Randall. I could get George, his schedule and interest permitting, and I've spoken to some YouTube guitarists who are interested. So I'm not trying to be like, and now I shall dominate the interest. I'm not the internet. I'm trying to get interesting people on here and talk about things that we don't talk about all the time.
Things that get us excited,
Yeah. I get Robinette. Yeah.
Rob's another sweetheart. I love Rob.
Bruce Zinke and I don't have anything to say to each other. I need a much bigger swear.
You've burnt that bridge, have you?
Yeah. A couple other guys I don't think would ever be interested in it. Let's get back to some of the questions. But
we've got quite a few to get through. Now, someone mentioned ways to improve the 2203 ground scheme. I'll just try and find that question again because he was.
Was it near where we were? Because we were at Magisterium Guitars.
It was back a bit. Okay. Hi, I'm new here. Oh, hang on. No, that's a different one. Wait. Oh God.
I saw one. It wasn't a question. It was just a kind of a thank you for putting up the stuff I put in the video on that. I thought, and you were talking about something, so I didn't put it up there because it seemed to be a thank you rather than a question. And we were still doing.
You repeated it, so I just like to get rid of that one, just so now I can't find it.
Well, we will come across it. Let's see.
Let's
try to motor through some. Yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about custom laminated eucalyptus, Leon. Sorry. For stuff like that, contact Brad off chat because he'd be glad to build you that.
Yep.
West Chilton favorite bassman circuit, either the AA864, AB165 clone like I'm talking about, hybrid, or the good old-fashioned 5F6A. Probably give the nod to the 5F6A because it started an entire company called Marshall, and it's a great sounding amp. Let's see here.
Just a quick one. Someone just asked two questions. So I can answer both. Two birds with one stone.
Sure.
Where did you get the Soldano transformer rewound? I recently did a stereo Soldano rack mount amp. Got one of the output transformers rewound. That was AK Transformers in Kingsgrove, Sydney. He's got an actual store. I don't know. It looks like there's newspaper in the front window, like it's a closed store, but he's in there winding transformers and coils all day. He's an artisan, and it performed very well once we got it back, and both channels balanced up nicely. I sent him. It was a good example. It's the first time I've used him. It was a good example because I could send him the good channels output transformer and say match these parameters, and here's another transformer to measure. And it came back great. So yeah, AK Transformers in Kingsgrove.
Very
I
cool.
think he's not online or anything. He's very old school, but he does have a listing on Yellow Pages or whatever.
All right. In different universe, asking about bassman tone stacks and like to scoop the mids. In general, you don't want to crank the treble in the bass, but you do want to if you raise the treble and bass, the mids will be scooped in relation. If you raise the treble and bass, you're going to want to decrease the volume to offset that. If you want to get more mids, turn the treble and bass below noon, but not all the way off, and then turn the volume up, and you'll get a mid-range thing. I have 2 videos up on Fender Tone Stacks, which explain a bit of this, and there's the excellent tone stack calculator from Duncan Amps out there.
It's a good one.
But that's as much time as I want to give that right now because I'm trying to get through as many questions as possible. But in general, you want more mids, turn the treble and bass down, the volume up. Less mids on a fixed mids Fender, turn the treble and bass up, not all the way, but up maybe 7, and turn the volume down. You'll hear it. It's going to be... That tone stack was chosen to give a very nice balance of things, and you can just adjust the balance with the 3 knobs, the volume, the bass, and treble. Thank you, Travis. Good to see you. Back in Black, Josh Roberts. I don't think that's a
Trevor.
question, but it is.
That was
Back in Black is a
reference to the guitar albums.
hell of a statement, isn't it? Yeah. One of the tricks to the Back in Black guitar sound is not the guitar sound; it's the drums sound, and the separation. Because if you play those parts without the drums, they're okay. You put that drum sound in there, and there it is. Let's see. People talking about pastel, Fender colors, bass sounds through Fender combos. Let's see. Let's see. Sorry, this is always fun towards the end, because by the end where I'm trying to catch all the questions, people have been waiting for me to answer the questions, so they start talking to each other so much. Maybe I need to do one of those things where people say at Sonic Audio for questions, so it stands out to me.
And we did just change the chats. It was, you had to be a subscriber for multiple days a second ago. We just changed it to what was it, 15 minutes?
15 minutes. I'm just trying to keep the bots out. Yeah. Like
as much as we like sex bots.
Yeah. Yeah, Coldacre. I know the whole Vertex Wah debacle, and
I only became aware of that recently. But
some people are really anti-Vertex. Others are fine with that.
Hey, in my opinion, he went the right way about it afterwards.
I've only known Mason in the last couple months. I'm giving him a second chance. He's been very cool with me. I think he touched that stove and got burned, and he's still around in business. So something had to be going right, and it's none of my business. I certainly had my problems 15 years ago. It's a very difficult thing to do this in this industry, and people will get pissed at you. Sometimes it's your fault, sometimes it's your not. But I'm not going to get in. He's not done anything to me. I think he paid his dues on that, and it's none of my business. And I think more of the internet needs a little bit of that. It's none of my business. Mesa screwing over their owners, Fender taking you for granted. That's my business. People's personal foibles, not so much. And Mason's been really nice.
There was another drama like that right when I started getting into pedals, and I don't think YouTube was really even a thing at that point. It was the Freakish Blues pedals. He was just getting Joyo pedals and repainting them and gooping the existing circuit board and then charging like $400 for them.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of pedals out there that were fancy paint jobs with a postage stamp worth of stuff inside.
It's like, what's the difference between getting a Chinese Joyo, repainting it and glooping it? You're getting the same thing as a boutique pedal. That it's the same end game. Like these boutique pedals that they build and goop, and they're not gooping it to protect their IP. They're gooping it to protect the fact that they've stolen someone else's IP. That's why they goop pedals, basically.
Yeah.
It just means if anything goes wrong, it goes in the bin.
The concept of gooping a Chinese pedal to protect IPs. Sorry. So I made it to the Soldano rewind question. We're getting there. Yeah, Brad can play. He just wasn't playing there on his little 8-inch.
It was out of tune, and I just put a string on Friday, and that stabilized. Now the B string's out of tune, and I'm not tuning up on stream. It's just it is what it is, mate.
people talking about your amp. So I'm always behind. Thanks, Scott Wilcox. Yeah, the basement's going great. Thank you very much. There'll be more to come on that. I
knew that video would kick ass. I knew it would do well too with the views. I told you.
I was afraid that amp was going to kick my ass, but we got lucky on that. I'm going to be redoing the circuit board and the bias board and the filter board next video. I might have to order some parts before I do that, though. I need to see.
Sure, you can't just reform those caps, mate.
I cannot undo the bad.
It's gonna have some soul, that thing. It's gonna be a fantastic looking thing when it's done.
I can't undo the J hooks. So this was poorly. Good parts used poorly, and I'm not going to send it, because if anything in here that the previous guy did fails after I do all this work,
then we get blamed.
It's going out with my name on it. I'm rebuilding all this perfectly, and some other little tweaks that will be revealed soon. But yeah, it's going to be made. as close to perfect as any Fender amp ever could be,
Love to
while
play it.
retaining all the grit and patina and history. I wish you could play it, man. That'd be cool. Question here on Vibrolux 65. Okay. Oh, you won't have any problem with the 5U4 and GZ34. Later Vibroluxes, later Fenders in general switched from the GZ34 to the 5U4. I think possibly because wall voltages were going up, but they never changed the power transformer. So all the power transformers that were running GZ34s quite happily ran 5U4s in the 70s. It lowers the B plus by about 20 to 30 volts depending on the individual tube. In fact, I've got a 66 Deluxe Reverb here that, due to its individual secondary winding on its power transformer, runs way too hot for 6 V6s with 120 volts mains, and the owner does not want to use a Variac or a Brown box because it's just a hassle. So we're putting a 5U4 in it, and it'll be right back at where the screens and plates want to be with the 6 V6 without changing anything else in the amp. The heaters are like 6.5, so they'll be fine.
Sweet as, bro.
Cool, Christopher. Yeah, I figure John and I would get back in touch with each other. It's just hard with Brad's in Australia, John's in the UK, and I'm here in the center of the world, as America thinks of itself. But the time zone differences are quite the thing.
Yeah, just never sleep, mate. That solves it.
Yeah, well, I spent like decades not sleeping. You might have noticed that I do drink a little bit more coffee than most.
True.
Let's see.
You may have discovered I drink a little bit more whiskey than most.
You drink a lot more than I do, but yeah. All right, now we're to the point where I walked in with came back to the chat with that video. Thanks, Jack Howell. Sorry, we already did that, but thank you again. Let's see.
One thing I'm just looking up regarding the rectifiers. Sorry, I'm often frantically looking up specs while you're discussing things. So the GZ34 has a maximum capacitance input of 60 hertz, and the 5U4 is 40 hertz. Microfarad. God, I'm reading the...
Yes, but people ignore that all the time.
Yeah. It's just like.
But the thing is, in the stock amps, those things were either getting 32 microfarad or 35 microfarad nominally, depending on which amp they're in. So if there's super reverb, nominally the 270s 35. In a Vibrolux like this one would be 32 with the two parallel 16s. So they're both under the max capacitance for either output tube. So you can put a 5U4 in there. You can put a 5 AR4 GZ34 in there. You just need to make sure the bias is set accordingly. But the same power transformer was used in 1973 with the 5U4 as was used in 1965 with the GZ34/5 AR4.
I've been meaning to do.
But it's a very good question. I'm glad that you asked. Sorry, go ahead.
5Y3s.
Yeah, and the Sovtech non-5Y3, the micro
I've been meaning to do a
GZ34.
video. And just the variance in brands. Like I had 4 different samples of 5Y3 here, and they were drastically different. And like I had a champ that wouldn't cool down no matter what. And then I just put another brand of 5Y3 and everything was sweet. And it's literally if you put the wrong 5Y3 in, even though they're all branded 5Y3, you could be running way too hot. So I'd like to do a video on that. I'll try and find time to do it a little bit more systematically than my usual rants.
All right, here's the question you're looking. Yeah, I am listening to you, Brad. Sorry, I was trying to look at the questions at the same time.
It's okay,
here's that question you were saying about 2204 ground schemes. No, I don't have time to review circuits. Brad might. I don't have time to. I've put so much information on 2204 ground schemes on the channel already.
Is there that much to change, really, if in a stock circuit, unless you're trying to boost the gain?
Well, no, if you really want to get rid of all the zzz in the background, there are. But I've already shown how to do that. And if what you see in the video, I mean this nicely, people. If you've watched my videos on Marshall grounding and watched my videos on getting the last buzz and hum out of 2203s and 2204s, and you then have questions, you don't need to work on a 2203 or 2204. If you're qualified to work on one of those amps, you will see what I'm doing. You'll understand what I've already shown you. you won't need me to send you anything else. If you watch that and it's still a mystery, don't work on that amp. Build a champ. Work on something else. Get your skill set up. A 2203, 2204 is not an amp to learn on.
They're not
for a number of reasons. I don't mean to be mean.
I think the problem is a lot of these the kits can be very vague about things like grounding. Like they'll just show a ground symbol everywhere. It's like, well, hang on, what ground? It's like, well, ground's not ground. Like, it's,
right.
Because there are resistances in materials, ground's not ground. If we can make a superconductor amp, then ground will be ground everywhere, but that's not happening anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, the fender layout on this Bassman has got, like 8 inches between some grounds on the chassis and 4 inches between others and 2 inches between others. And there are micro resistances between those, which actually work in your favor when there are no loops. There are loops aplenty in 2203, 2204s, 1987s, 1959s. And in my videos, I show you how to remove them and why they exist, why they're there. Like that bus wire on the back of the pots is not your friend. But here's a question you might be able to answer for him, Brad.
All right. Can you explain any tonal differences, if any, between different impedances on a multi-tap output transformer? Correct. Match speaker impedance. I seem to remember 65 amps discussing it. So when you're saying tonal, not really. I guess if you've got an impedance match, you've got the most efficient transfer of power. That's how like transmission lines work. But yeah, in terms of the tonal changes, I don't know. I've never really experimented with running transformers out of spec. Is that what you're referring to, Ben? Like running off by one impedance into your speakers, say running a 16 ohm output.
I think Dan at 65 might have been promoting that there was a difference in sound between an 8 ohm tap into an 8 ohm load versus a 16 ohm tap into a 16 ohm load. And I think that would only be the case if you had a very badly done transformer. In my experience, or either that, or maybe the misunderstanding here is moving the feedback connection on a different tap. True. That would be a big change. But,
without knowing the context of what he was discussing, I probably can't really comment. But
yeah, I don't want to argue with Dan Boole. He's a nice guy, and I don't know specifically what he said in that video that you're referencing. In general, though, in a high quality output transformer, I found that if you have 8 to 8 or 16 to 16, you're fine. You need to make sure that the negative feedback is in the circuit is corrected to the tap it was designed for. But that's a separate issue that the owner should never have to worry about. Here's one for you.
Brad, have you ever turned a truss rod into a leveling beam to match the neck under tension? No, because I have a leveling jig. I've got the Stumac, the Irvine neck jig, which I use. Often it's mainly pulled into play for necks that really go into a bit of an S shape when you've got the strings on. Some necks will measure... Here's my... This is actually my guitar setup bench that I'm videoing on, so all my tools are over here. I've got a sanding beam. This is literally just emery paper on one side of a precision ground piece of tubing. I've been meaning to get the actual radius beams from Stumac, but you're talking $2,000 for the full set of them. They're useful for clamping and everything as well, but point being, generally, if you're doing a fret level, you can just use it in a neck cradle. I've got these ones here. They sort of self-level and support the neck at 2 points. If you've got a real difficult neck that won't behave itself until it's got strings on there, I tension it up, take measurements with a neck jig. There's a whole process. And then you remove the strings, and then using the dial gauges on the bottom of the neck, you reposition the neck with straps and tension and struts and stuff to get back to the shape that it was when the strings were on it, which is usually an S-bend. That's the real nightmare if you've got a hump around the 12th fret, but then it's still concave from there up to the nut, because you can't get any decent playability out of the thing. And if you put it just in the neck jig, it won't simulate the actual shape. But using a truss rod to make a leveling beam is an interesting concept because in the joinery industry, I've had to make doors that were like 4 meters high, and timber over that length, when you've got a 3 mil door gap and all the doors are supposed to be perfectly in line. This is like, you know, millionaires' houses we were making, so any imperfection they would flag it and you'd have to remake it. So often you'd factor in essentially a truss rod for a door. The back of the doors would all have a groove put in them with an anchor at top and bottom, and you'd tension the rod. And even if all the doors had a slight convex shape to them, at least they were all aligned and your eye didn't pick it up. So you can use truss rods to shape timber slightly by same principle as a truss rod. So I guess if you were to simulate like a curve, say on a martin or something that doesn't have a truss rod and it was a little bit high, you could maybe make a shape sanding beam that had a very slight concave. This is just me spitballing at the moment. If that's what you were asking, I'm probably going off on a tangent like I do. Next question.
I'm trying to get. I'm skipping some just back and forth stuff, and so I'm trying to find some that only you or I could answer, because a lot of Scott Brockway says his question was skipped. I'm sorry, Scott. Ask again. Oh wait, was that the question about 2.1 millimeter jack? Man, here's the thing, Scott. You can email. You can contact me and Brad all the time and put in comments. I'm trying to get to the more of the amp stuff. 2.1 millimeter jacks. You know, we don't need to spend the video going up and looking up data sheets. Yeah,
I'm just going to Google it for you. You can Google it.
I don't mean to be mean, but you know, we're not here to Google. We're here to tell you stuff that Google would ask us. That sounds weird, but it's true. I'll ask amp questions and get things I wrote 10 years ago as the answer on Google.
I heard the other day that an AI algorithm actually used someone on Fiverr to solve a problem that it was asked to solve.
Mm-hmm.
That is some like end of days shit.
I don't know what Fiverr is.
So Fiverr is it's sort of like a thing where there's a bunch of people, mainly software developers, graphic designers. You put out a task, a job, a quick job, like say, I want this video edited. Someone edits it, you pay them like a pittance, and you get back the finished job, right? So it's basically farming out labor.
So yeah, okay, making everyone ask if they want fries with that. Gotcha.
Yeah, very questionable moral company, but AI actually used human labor to solve a problem that it was asked to solve. That's scary.
How did it use human labor to solve a problem?
Because someone asked an AI algorithm to solve some problem, right? Mm-hmm. The algorithm actually went online and assigned a task to someone on Fiverr, used a human to solve the fucking problem.
Did the human get paid?
The person, no. Well, they would have got the Fiverr payment, I guess, from somehow. But
how much money does the AI have?
I don't know.
I guess it has access to all our bank accounts if it wants. So,
but yeah, that. I don't know. Yeah, I've got to look up the article on that because that was some pretty scary stuff. I just saw that yesterday. But anyway, totally unrelated. So let's move on.
All right, more less frightening. I think he's playing tens.
Me?
No, on this thing.
Oh, on that. Right.
I can't tell if they're nines or tens because the actions. These got to be nines. Yeah,
I use nines on the Strat.
I can't. Usually can't play nines. These might be tens, and this is a really great fret job. Ooh, sweetness! I did that big bend. I play harder than Brian. He plays better. I play harder. Let's see. All right, now to the thumbs down thing. Let's see.
Just reading.
I'm trying to find. Now the people they want to hear interviewed. So I'll go back and read all that stuff.
So just quickly, just recapping on that speaker output impedances. I didn't think about it this way, but just in case said, nice name by the way. Mismatching speaker and output impedances will affect damping factor. So yeah, that's true.
Well, mismatching will affect a lot of stuff. Primarily,
Yeah.
though, it's going to affect your reflected impedance on the primary, and some amps are going to be fine with that, and some amps are going to be very unhappy with that. You don't do that very often successfully with ELF 84s. Mesa does it all the time with ice cold bias 5881s, though. So
Yeah, true.
Let's
I
see
had
here.
a triple rectifier, and it's got the bold and spongy switch, and then it's also got the high and low power, I think. Yeah, high and low power. Oh, and the tube or silicon rectifier switch. So on the tube rectifier, on the spongy setting, in
I'm
stock
listening to you.
form, with Mesa tubes, 8% dissipation.
Yeah, and I often
8%.
Yeah, I usually find 15 to 30 is typical, but I found lower on spongy stuff. Oh, I see. I think this is 10s. This guitar is tuned down a half step,
Down a step. Yeah, right.
and I just was tuning the wrong thing because I was listening to you guys. I didn't recognize it as being down a step because I have the headphones on. I'm barely hearing the thing. Hopefully, you guys aren't hearing it too much out there in the YouTube world.
So
But
Carl's asking.
it's just a lot of fun to play this thing. Go ahead.
Carl's asking, do most folks use the term ground or earth in Australia? Well, they're two different things. Earth is the earth, like literally the earth. It's the center pin on your mains plug, right? That's earth, because it goes into a friggin' copper stake that's punched 1,200 mil into the ground outside your house, because we literally use the earth as a return conductor. As for ground, ground's generally what we refer to as one of the grounding points that connects to earth at a single point inside the chassis of a device. And ground then is divided up into different grounds in some devices. So say you've got a digital effects processor, it will have an audio ground and a digital ground, and they will be separated as much as possible and then connected at a point where it's not going to cause issues with noise finding its way from the digital circuit into the analog circuit. So you can have multiple grounds. You've got one earth in any device. The earth is the main connection to the mains plug, ground pin, earth pin, sorry.
Around here, we just call it dirt.
Dirt.
Thanks,
That
RJ.
photo of the guy, the electrician that couldn't get a good grounding point, so he just put a Ziploc bag with some dirt in it and put the wire in that. Job done.
Yeah. Let's see here. I'm going to reach Colby Jack. I'm going to reach out to Steve Carr. I'm going to reach out to Brian at Top Hat. I'm going to reach out to Michael at Swart. I've had nice things to say about their products. And it's because they make good stuff, and I think the world needs to know about people making good stuff. So if I can, and I've spoken to two of the guys. I haven't spoken to Michael yet. I've had an email exchange. They seem really nice people. So I think it's expand everything. It's nice to put a face behind the thing, and John Sir is definitely on my list. His schedule
man.
permitting. He's a good looking man. Dave Friedman, man, he looks like Jor-El or something. Is that Superman's dad?
I don't know. I wasn't a Superman fan.
Someone out
I
there.
was more Ren and Stimpy.
I was that too, but I'm not gonna. If I can, thanks, Wes. I appreciate that. We both do. If I'll split the proceeds with you tonight.
Shut up.
We can go have some beers separately. I don't think if I compare anyone in the industry to Ren or Stimpy or any of the characters there, I'm gonna lose a lot of connections
Toast
going forward.
Man.
Maybe I was about to say maybe Powdered Toast Man would be acceptable.
He was their version of Superman. So
Yeah, it's love.
I used to sing that at school. God, you're bringing back memories.
Yeah,
I actually used to get real upset because Ren and Stimpy show was on that Saturday morning that I was supposed to be at guitar lessons.
mm-hmm.
So every time it would be a fight, because I was like 6-7 years old. Every time it would be a fight to get me to go to guitar lessons because I wanted to stay at home and watch Ren and Stimpy. But, yeah, I was learning the Lemon song instead at guitar lessons.
Mm-hmm. Man. Well, did you learn Happy Happy Joy Joy?
Yeah. I probably still remember it to this day.
It's
something about
it's-
teaching
it's-
your grandmother to suck eggs or
it's-
something.
It's 3 whole chords. I think you could probably pull it off.
Yeah.
Real improv. Let's see.
That's more than
Oh,
you
my
need. That's
beloved
like
ice
jazz.
cream bar. I've got
Space
madness.
Stimpy, your blood attack protoplasm. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're well over though. We don't need
Way
to
off
have
track.
beer to
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like during Dry July, I was doing the video reviews of the non-alcoholic beverages to raise money for victims of cancer.
yeah.
You don't need alcohol.
We all know you're a
ease your
nice
mind.
guy, Brad. You don't have to keep
You don't-
mentioning that. Damn
just
kids
priming
with
them up.
cancer and how much you help them.
I'm just priming them up for next year when I do it again.
Yeah.
But yeah, the amount of stupidity on those reviews shows that you don't need alcohol to be an idiot.
Yeah.
I can do that perfectly naturally. So, questions.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Where are we at?
I'm get. Let's see. Yeah. Gooden's having a good day on YouTube repair stuff. I'm looking for the next real good one. I think I've
Right now is a very busy time for streams. Big Clive just finished. Sunday's the day when it all happens. I think Jace from Headfirst did a stream yesterday as well. Haven't watched that yet.
2 nights ago. I was listening to that.
nights.
I think it was 2 nights
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
I was listening to that while I was working on that chassis on the basement. He had
Gotta
Simon,
catch up.
amazing player who had done plays with Virgil Donati and Men at Work. I don't think you have to play Virgil Donati to play Down Under, but I'm sure the Down Under pays better. So they were talking about the background behind the 12 different tones he did with the Alta. It was a good live
Yes.
stream. I'm surprised that more people haven't found Jason's channel because
Yeah,
he's
get on
doing
the
great
Headfirst.
content. I think it's an Australian thing, and just the rest of the world doesn't necessarily tune into Australia. But I'm gonna see what I can do about that. Seth B asked, "What string gauge do I prefer?" I don't think anyone out there is worried about sounding and playing like me, but I like 10 through 46, except on the 335, like 10 through 50. It just doesn't plink.
Yeah, on Gibbo scale length, I'll generally use the power slinkies, or the Elixir equivalent. I use Elixir if I'm not playing the guitar often. Like I've got my acoustic at home. I play quite a bit, but then I'll have like another acoustic that I just take camping or something, and I'll put Elixirs on that, so I'm not changing the strings every week because you put the finger grease and whatever on there, and if you don't clean it off, the strings just turn to rust. Whereas the Elixirs, you can sit them there for 6 months and they're fine. So,
But they never
there's no
sound good to
reason
start
use them.
with. I hate elixirs.
Not really, but I don't play that good, so it works out well.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. I have. I need to replace them because they don't last forever. But I've got. Can't think of the name. I've got a coated phosphorus.
Kurt Mangan.
Kurt Mangan's on my acoustics. I love those things.
See? Mind reader. I am.
Thank you. And I just use NYXL D'Addarios on the electrics because even if they were to last a long time, as far as rust or sweat, I play those things so hard. You get dents and the intonation goes out on electric strings when you bend them. You can't. It doesn't matter if it never rusts if it won't stay intonated. So about every 6 weeks at the most, all my electrics get changed out. The acoustics, because I don't play them every day on the channel, that's where I like the Kurt Mangan coateds because I only have to do those about every 6 months. If I was
haven't tried
gigging,
them yet.
if I was gigging, I'd change them once a month. I'm not gigging, so
One of my suppliers does sell them, so I think I'll get a few sets. Try them out.
no, sir, don't like it. Let's see. Here's a question.
That's the horse, isn't it?
Yeah, here's a question for you from Chris Butler.
Brad, you mentioned Class D in response to another question. Any opinion on my gamble? Using a pair of TC Electronic BAM 200 mini bass heads as a poor man's stereo Duncan Power Stage killer. I don't know. I know nothing of that amp, but
I do.
If you,
It sucks.
oh, okay, there you go.
It sucks hard. It's
What is it?
got multi-layer boards for the preamp. So when something fails in the
Oh,
preamp,
for the preamp.
it can be in the inner layer, and then you're like, oh, hopefully they'll send me a replacement board because I can't change the problem inside the PCB, between the top and bottom layer.
Yeah.
The output section was also bad, but that was just an ICE module. That was pretty easy. But
Nice, yeah. Generally, I'd say if you're getting a 2, 3, 4, 500 watt amp that's the size of a pack of smokes, there's going to be some compromises and it's not going to last. So,
yeah.
Get yourself, if you want a solid bass rig, literally, I'll just get a PSA, Sans amp, preamp, and a bloody PA amplifier and put it in a rack. And if your amp ever dies, you've got another channel. If one channel dies, you've got a spare channel. If the whole amp dies, you can change it out with a higher one. It's just a flat response PA amplifier that's not going to influence your tone, and it's just going to provide clean power. And that's probably what I'd do if I was touring, because then you've sort of got a bit of a bulletproof rig there.
I really dig this guitar. Exotic.
I can tell.
I've got a YouTube channel. I'm like at 41,000 subscribers. If you want to send me one, I'll mow your grass.
Not that anyone's counting.
In this, from Exotic Guitars point of view, I'm no one. That's nothing. I'm making fun of myself, really.
Yeah.
It's like that thing you sent me. When do I get my free one?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'm making fun of myself. It'd be really easy to get big head about 41,000. That's like the interest on Rick Beato subscribers is
that's
nothing.
like the views he gets in 3 hours.
Yeah,
You've
everyone.
got to keep it in perspective, eh?
Yeah,
As long as
absolutely.
we love what we're doing, it's all good.
We're going to be wrapping it up, but we're almost current. Here's a super chat from Da Pork Chop Express.
I love that name. You guys have the best names.
Yeah.
Gents, I have a vertical 2x12 cabinet, greenback on top, V30 on the bottom, thinking of mixing a creamback with a V30. Any opinions? Oh, not really. I don't know. Try it. It's really hard to advise people on speakers because you give them all the advice in the world and then they actually stand in the room with it and they're like, no, I hate it. And it's like, okay.
I might be able to
a few
help
cabs.
with this one. I might be able to help with this one. Then I'll let you get back to it. The shop cab I have here, the 2x12 that you hear, probably 90% of the amps played through and recorded through, unless you specifically see a mic on a combo speaker. Everything with that black unlabeled 2x12 is my shop cab. Up top, I've got an ET65. On the bottom, I have a Veteran 30. The ET65 is very similar to a Creamback 65. The Veteran 30 is very similar to a Vintage 30. It has a little less of that 1 to 2 hertz, 2K spike that a Vintage 30 has, so it's a little nicer with overdrive. The ET65 and the Creamback 65 are almost interchangeable. If you listen to those videos with a number of different guitars and players and amps and you like the sound, you'll be very happy with the V30 Creamback combination. That's the closest I can give you to if you like what I've got, you'd like that. But Brad had some other thoughts when I interrupted him so rudely.
Oh, I was just saying, I've got a couple of cabs here with just the sort of common speakers in them. I've picked up a few more recently. I'm going to do another run of cabinets towards the end of the year. I'm sort of planning December to be my fun building month. I'm not going to take any repairs. I'm going to try and keep everything on track before then. I'm going to work my ass off and make sure that nothing ends up sitting here more than, say, a month. And got some projects to build in December. I want to make it fun towards the end of the year instead of stressing out like last year. So I'm going to build a bunch more cabinets, all different speakers. I'm going to have clearly labeled on the front what speakers in what so everyone can try stuff out. I'm also going to make a cabinet that's got a removable, say, 2/3 back. So you can make it closed back or 2/3 open, similar to what a combo would be. And it'll have a little, like a little foam thing so nothing rattles and it all just sits at home. And that way, if you want to closed or open back, you can change, you can play with it yourself. That sounds wrong. I was thinking about getting the Eminence Wall of Sound, which one of my suppliers sells. It's basically a massive wall cabinet with like 12 drivers in it, and it's got a selector switch. You can choose each one, but I don't think that's a realistic sort of use case scenario for each speaker. I think it's a good marketing tool. But it doesn't really show you what it sounds like in a cab, and there's no way easily to change it from closed to open back, that kind of thing. So I think that's more of just a look what we've got sort of deal. And that supplier I'm sort of not on, great terms with because price-wise he's done some underhanded stuff. So I don't know. It's it seems like there's different prices being offered to different vendors. So don't know. It's nothing I can prove. But at the moment, as a small retailer, you don't really get a lot of favors from these guys. So I don't really want to display their marketing stuff in the shop if they're not giving me a competitive price point. So I'll just design my own stuff and build it and sell it as well. So
I'm trying to get to the end here. Dustin, real fast, the Kurt Mangan coated strings are not slippery. They don't feel like nano webs or anything. They feel like regular phosphor bronze strings. They're good. They feel like regular Diodarios, only I think they sound a little bit better than a lot of uncoated strings. But, try them. It's a real personal choice on acoustic. Strings make so much more difference on acoustic than electric. But here is a very important one to ask 2-amp guys. And I'm going to give the U.S. version, and I think Brad might have some Australian or other 240-volt country regulations to add on to this. In the United States, there are a couple of schools of thought as far as people do it different ways. There's only one way to do it safely, and it's not just a good idea. It's literally the law in a lot of places. Any electrical device that has current over X must be protected, isolated from everything else. So the fuse is the first thing on the hot, must be fused before the power switch. Some older amps like Marshalls are sometimes grandfathered in, but you have to have the fuse before the power switch so that the device does not pose a risk to everything else. It must be self-fused, isolated from the rest of the system. And the reasons that is important is that power switches occasionally fail as a short. They can short, if it's a double pole, double throw, they can short hot to neutral. That's bad. They can short hot to chassis. That's also bad. They can short, to ground. So power switches do fail in catastrophic ways. If you have the fuse after that, that means it's putting the burden on your circuit breaker, and which may or may not be up to code because you may live in a 100-year-old house. It's much better to be able to change a $1 fuse on the back of an amp than to rebuild electrical wiring that all went up from old wiring. In the United States, the code is that the ground must go to chassis by itself immediately within X distance of the entrance of that power cable. If it is an IEC connector, it must be connected typically through a chassis machine screw with certain combinations of locking washers and everything, and nothing else shares with that. If you have an older amp like the Fender's reissues that come in with a non-removable power cable, then the green or green and striped ground must be going to its own location on the board, separate from everything else. Should be longer than the hot and neutral. The hot goes to the fuse, goes to the inmost connection of the fuse, and then from there goes to the power switch. Ideally, you would have the hot and neutral switched. In many amps, you only switch the hot, that's fine. You would not fuse the hot and then switch the neutral or vice versa. That's stupid. It's pointless. In 240-volt countries, I think you have to have a double pole, double throw switch that does hot and neutral together, but I'll let that go to Brad because he deals with that all the time.
I don't think it's code that you have to have one because almost no appliances do. It's a good idea too, and if I'm going to design an amp, I'll design that in. So, yeah, it'll go hot straight to fuse, straight to switch, straight to transformer primary, neutral to other pole of the switch, straight to transformer primary. The worst I see here is a lot of the Chinese-made or even some of the European-made amps, like Hughes and Kettner did it on a few, where pressed into the top lip of the chassis. You know, imagine it's like a shape like that, the top of the chassis. Oh, sorry, chassis. They've actually pressed like a fork profile into the lip, and then they just have a spade connector. So when you slide that chassis into the cabinet, it pulls the earth off the chassis. So I don't know how they got that into the country, because as far as I'm aware, that should be illegal, because it's very easy to pull it off. But yeah, I generally just make sure the first thing that the active sees is a fuse, because I've seen switches, even Marshall style switches, literally melted in place. And if that's occurred, it's probably because something's overcurrent, and if someone, all it takes is the user to put in an oversized fuse, and you just got a fire on your hands. So a lot of transformers will have a thermal fuse built in, but not necessarily. So. And
Well,
Wes is making fun of me saying Shazzy.
Well, I'm gonna make fun of good, and I'm gonna go listen to some ABBA after this. ABBA were great, man. I don't know what you're saying that Beato shouldn't have interviewed somebody from ABBA. That guy was a brilliant songwriter, and those arrangements are fantastic. I like everything if it's good.
He unsubscribed.
Yeah. Oh my God. And Beato, it'd be easy to throw darts at him because he's like the number one figure in guitar music world on YouTube. I think he's doing an amazing job. I really loved it when he was doing what makes a song great, because he had all the stems, the actual tracks. I have no idea how he got it, but he he really does teach well. I think he teaches very well. I like that he has, he will interview the people that you think are going to give him clicks, but then he'll interview Emily Salyers from Indigo Girls. He finds real musicians. Put it this way, Sting has been interviewed a jillion times.
Yeah.
It was the first time he was asked questions by a musician about his music as opposed to his haircut or the movie role or whatever. I think that Beato does a great thing, and I have a small inkling of what it must be like just from going from 1,000 to 41 in a couple of years. His world could have gone as crazy as a rock star. He could have just been Captain Ego, Captain Excess. I'm the biggest. He comes across very genuine, and he goes out of his way to present music that he loves, and whether that's Joni Mitchell or ABBA or recently Pat Metheny. He doesn't have to do that. He could just be showing you how Aerosmith songs were recorded and making money on his formula. He doesn't. So I have to respect that, and I don't have to like everything he likes, and I don't have to agree with everything he says or necessarily think that he's always expressing something the best possible way. He's still trying, and I like that an awful lot. And I have to be careful which blue shirts I wear, because between that and the white hair, I don't want to be accused of being a wannabe. So
Victor's here. G'day, Victor. Aloha.
Aloha. Mahalo, Victor. Just in time for us to end, because I think we've been doing this 3 hours and 15 minutes, and we'll do this again. And Brad, it's fun. It's been fun, and it's really been nice that I can go get a cup of coffee from the kitchen, and you just stream it. Having a COD as my co-pilot. So
I'll look at maybe finding a way for me to in the future maybe do the chat production thing. We might talk about that. Maybe if it makes it a bit easier to present the questions and stuff.
Well, when Dave Friedman does it, he's got Mark doing a lot of this stuff, even if Mark doesn't participate in all the chats. But the thing is, it's my channel, and you're just as capable of answering these questions as I do. So I wouldn't want you to be sitting there just producing. You'd have to be part of it. We're going to find a way to make this work. The main reason we haven't done this before, besides that we both had to get our tech stuff up to this spec, is time difference. He's in goddamn Australia.
Damn it.
Anyway, this has been great. Everyone, please click like and subscribe before you go. I don't say that very often, and I'm supposed to tell you every 5 minutes and be obnoxious and tell you to smash things. And be sure, go over and check out Brad. Like and subscribe his stuff.
I'm going to have a lot of videos coming out in the next couple of weeks. I've just spent all weekend filming, so I've got to
I get previews of stuff he's working on. You're going to have fun with his stuff.
Yeah, especially when I get stuck.
That doesn't happen very often. You just don't share those videos,
I share everything, bugger it. Warts and all, mate.
Yeah. All right. Everyone have a wonderful week. We're going to end this now. Let's see if I can figure out how to do this. Go to the
champions.
Next screen. All right, I'm going to click this button in a few, and then they'll cut off our mics and all that fun stuff. But everyone, wave goodbye to Brad. Wave goodbye to me. Wave goodbye to each other. See you next time.
Get a dog up, yeah.
Wrong button. Sorry.